Hey, y'all. Hey, what's going on? Good morning, good morning, good morning. We're here for another day of testimony. I have no idea who will be testifying today. So thank you, Chick Tracy. Thank you very much. Let's say hi to everybody. Hey, Cement Shoes. Hello, Chick Tracy. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Max 2002. Hello, Welsh Pam. I may miss anybody? Nope. Okay, good. How y'all doing today? Y'all ready? Like I said, I have no idea about, hey, Lori's Life Stories. Welcome, welcome. Good to see ya. I have hey, Carla Franco. Good to see ya. Welcome, welcome. I have no idea who's testifying today. However, I do got a little gossip. It's probably not new news to y'all because y'all are like me and you probably already heard it, but just in case you haven't, I'm going to share it with you. All right. So, remember in the opening statements made by Amber Heard's attorneys, okay? When she talked about the concealer that she had to keep it with her, 25-8 because, she didn't want anybody to ever see the bruise, yada yada yada, right? Okay. Well, the maker of the concealer palette that she used has come out and made a statement. And they made it, hey, Hope for Peace, on social media, obviously, but mainly on the Tickety Talks. And basically what they said is that the alleged incident of abuse was said to have occurred between like 20, when it happened, like in 2016 or whatever, or 20, but bottom line is this. They didn't come out with that concealer palette until December of 2017. So let me just make sure I have that 100% correct for y'all. All right. So basically on their TikTok, it says, Milani color correcting and concealer palette. Take note. Alleged abuse was around 2014 to 2016, got divorced 2016, makeup palette release date December 2017. Okay, so there's that, which I think is interesting, obviously, and I think a lot of people do. What else was I going to tell you guys? Let me think. Well, last night we went over the cross exam and then the last, 10, 15 minutes of redirect whenever we heard that whole audio where she said, go ahead and tell, and I'm not quoting verbatim. This is just, basically she said, go ahead and tell the whole world that you're abused and see if they believe you, yada, 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 right? Yeah. That is very, very, very damaging. And this morning when I was getting ready to go live, obviously, I do all my good thinking in the shower. I have my best ideas in the shower. So I was mulling over like the testimony and thus far. And then I also listened to Ben King, who it was basically the house manager at their house in Australia and the one that found the finger. And I listened to his testimony and, hey, Tony, good to see you. And I thought, well, let me just, I listened to it. I thought it was interesting. I don't really, he can't really say a whole lot because obviously, he can only testify really to what he knows directly, nothing that he heard, meaning if he overheard arguments, he can testify that he overheard the arguments, right? What he can't testify to is what was said. So, but I do still think that he was helpful because he also said that he took pictures of all the damage and, that which I thought was interesting. But The other thing that I was thinking about was the beginning of the testimony yesterday with the finishing up of the cross exam, right? So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking to myself, I find it interesting, and I have to admit that it was a good play. Do I think it's going to be successful? I don't know right yet. I have to think about that some more. However, when they immediately opened up cross exam for the day with the rapid fire question about what constitutes domestic violence, it particularly focusing on verbal, emotional, that kind of stuff, not things that are not physical. Because they got Johnny Depp to admit, and I mean, it's not like it's, such a huge stretch, right, for him to have admitted that. I mean, it's the truth. And I will have to see how effective that is with respect to the trial, because frankly, I think what they're trying to do now is obviously their game plan from the beginning is that, you know, it's not defamation, because first and foremost, it's the truth. Okay. And then obviously, the second part of that is Amber, was exercising her First Amendment right to free speech, which, okay. But anyway, I just think, like, it was an okay, I suppose, if all these things are going to come out about the law, about the physical abuse and the pictures, like not being real, I feel that, I suppose a better direction to go in would be to go in the direction of, um, okay, well, let's get it on. Let's get the abuse in on maybe like a technicality, meaning arguing semantics. Which, listen, I'm not like anti-arguing semantics. Frankly, there are times when arguing semantics is important, but I think in this situation, this is just my opinion. It definitely appears uh, desperate to argue semantics, frankly, this late in the game. And I will agree. I 100% agree with you, Max. Yeah, it was a tumultuous, unhealthy marriage. But you're 100% right. To call him that was wrong and not okay. And you know, we talked a little bit about her testifying, and I, bruh, I can't see it being a good idea for her to testify, frankly, but I know she has to. She has got to turn it around, and the jury, because they heard from Johnny Depp, um, they're gonna want to and expect to hear from Amber Heard, frankly, and that's just the truth. And this is I yes and no, sort of. I agree, but with like a little caveat. Look how fancy I am today with my big words. I have a caveat. Okay. I do think that she is responsible for the bulk of the toxicity. But I also think that Johnny Depp did the part of the work as far as healing in a way from what he went through as a child and what she or what he experienced. He did the most, in my opinion, probably the single most important step of that, which is to break the cycle with his own children and not have them witness that, frankly. So I feel like, yeah, he did that part. But I also feel like, um, he hasn't done the other part of the work all the way yet, which is to heal from that. And that takes a really long time. So I'm not faulting him for that. It takes a long, long time to heal from that kind of stuff, because first you have to acknowledge that, which he's done, right? But then you have to go further and you have to work on, do the work. And as you're doing the work, though, others, oh, hello. Oh, he's looking sharp today, y'all. You have to do the other part of, other stuff comes up as you're doing the work. So it's a process and it's constant. And, I feel like as much as the defense tried to throw in all these text messages and yada, 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 to show that he's, a reprobate, I think it fell flat, because I think it showed that he really, really is working on it and has sought help. And that's really all you can do. Oh, he is delicious. Lori, you haven't been in my stream before. So just so you know, you can say those types of things, but I've already called dibs on Johnny Depp. He is my husband. I'm thoroughly convinced that we're going to end up together. No, just kidding. Can you imagine if I was like that, though? Talk about delusional. Like, I try every once in a while, I will say, hey, Johnny, call me. But I know he's not going to call me. Maybe his assistant will call me. All right, let's see what's happening in the courtroom. Okay.
Good morning, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Tara Roberts.
All right. Let's see if we can get her on here. Nice. Miss Roberts, can you hear me?
Oh, this is one of them Zoom deals.
Can you hear me, Miss Roberts?
Let me see who this is while we wait to see if Miss Roberts can hear her.
Miss Roberts?
I tell you what, this judge handles technical difficulties so much better than I do. Because last night I was not flipping, but
Excuse me?
it was
Can you bring them in?
oh cripes. It was a big deal. Like I could handle it, but I didn't handle it great. The technical difficulties. That happened last night, and she's all calm, cool, and collected, and I'm like, this is annoying.
She's right.
Oh, Lori, no. She doesn't. Hey, nonstop mom.
Oh. Can you hear me, Miss Roberts?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Can you raise your right hand for me? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth under penalty of law?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We can't see her on the big screen.
All right, let me see who this is. Okay, Tara Roberts is the estate manager of Johnny Depp's Bahamas compound. Also, I like that people are bringing alpacas to the court outside, because let me just say this.
Split screen so we can start, please.
Yes, the island. Now that's going to make me, now that I said that, now that song is in my head, because I'm an island boy. Yeah, that song's in my head.
Question. Go ahead.
Now it's in yours. You're
That's what we're gonna do right now.
welcome.
Okay. Good morning. Would you please state your name for the record?
Tarly Roberts.
Ms. Roberts, how do you know Johnny Depp?
He's my
I
boo.
managed his island in the Exuma Keys in the Bahamas for the past 15 years.
Ms. Roberts, where do you live?
What a job. That would be fun.
I live on the island, and I have a home in Nassau and in Long Island, Bahamas, which I try to get to as frequently as possible.
Can you please describe Mr. Depp's private island generally?
My duties on the private island would be to maintain the island, the buildings, the houses, logistics, not included or limited to provisioning fuel, gas, groceries.
Another good one,
just
nonstop mom.
day-to-day operations, staff, and kind of like an estate just in the middle of nowhere.
Okay. Your Honor, I would like to pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 49, which has previously been submitted into evidence.
Okay.
And Mr. Gibson, if you could play this, and Your Honor, if you could publish this to the jury. Thank you. We can take that down. Ms. Roberts, do you recognize what is shown in that video?
Yes, that's Johnny's house on the island.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gibson, can you please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 348?
Wow, I thought it would be
And this
bigger,
hasn't
but
been
it's
submitted into
super
evidence
cute.
yet, so
I
let's
like
just
it.
play that for Ms. Roberts.
Also, this has literally nothing to do with the trial or the testimony or nothing, but I do like Johnny Depp's tie. It's looking very sharp. I love his pocket squares as well. I love a pocket square.
Ms. Roberts, do you recognize what is shown in that video?
Yeah, that's his house and closet area.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to, plaintiff moves to admit this into evidence.
All right, 348 in evidence.
Oh, I like how she has a backdrop
Yes,
to
and
keep
please publish
her
that to the jury.
privacy. I love it.
Mr. Gibson, once it's published, if we could play that again. And Ms. Roberts, what is that doorway with the beads that was just shown in that video?
That's the entrance to the closet.
I think so, Allie, that he's like,
In his
you
house.
know,
Thank you.
he could have a crazy, huge space
Ms.
and he
Roberts, I believe
doesn't.
you mentioned that you manage staff on the island. How many people work with you on the island?
Myself and three others is Jason Major, goes by CJ, Stephen Farrow, and Rico Major.
Is this, I believe the witness is not being shown to the jury right now on their screens.
Now, Johnny, I know that you're not allowed to watch
Thank you.
clips and stuff of the trial because obviously, but let me just say this. When you
Thank you.
can, please watch.
Ms. Roberts, how are you
I'll come
compensated
to
for your
that
work on the
island.
island?
Hmm.
I receive a monthly salary.
Other than this monthly salary, what other sources of income do you have?
I get
Isn't that
dividends and
something?
rental from family properties and businesses that we have.
Lori's life stories. What a coinky
Since you've been
dink.
working for Mr. Depp, how often have you seen him?
On average, 2-3 times a year. Sometimes it was longer, more visits. Sometimes I didn't see him for a period of time, depending on what his schedule was or what was happening on the island.
And how would you describe your interactions with Mr. Depp?
The island was a very family atmosphere, dinners together. He was very social. funny, humorous, very kind with all of us, and very outgoing. Enjoyed working with him and for him.
When you first started working on Mr. Depp's island, who would come down to the island?
At the beginning, it was Vanessa and the children.
Objection.
When he started dating
Relevance.
Amber.
All right, hold on a minute, ma'am. Objection.
Relevance.
It goes to
Cement
Ms. Roberts'
shoes.
knowledge of who came down to the island with
We
Mr.
can
Depp.
move forward. Next question.
Okay. Ms. Roberts, Ms. Roberts, are you aware if Mr. Depp brought, or how often did Mr. Depp bring guests with him to the island?
He had guests. He would bring Amber and Amber with her friends, and also I had on one of the occasions I had Paul Bettany and his wife and his children here on one of the trips.
And when did the Bettneys come down to the island?
It was Chick Tracy.
Sometime in the summer of July 2013.
What happened when the Bettneys came down?
It was a normal trip. We had an incident where I was asked to have Amber leave the island. I scheduled a flight for her to leave to go to Florida that morning, and then that afternoon I was told to bring her back, and I arranged for a flight for her to come back that afternoon to the island.
When did you first meet Ms. Hurd?
I believe it was shortly after they started dating.
What was your impression of Ms. Hurd when you first met her?
Objection.
Oh, they were very much in love.
Relevance.
Okay, go ahead. Next question.
Go ahead. I think Ms. Bredhoff withdrew her objection.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so Ms. Roberts, you can answer. What was your impression of Ms. Hurd when you first met
Oh,
her?
the attorneys have changed seats now.
Oh, they were very nice, a couple in love.
What is
They-
Amber
she
wearing?
cooked for
Let me get
him,
over here to this.
Cleaned up. They took care of each other. They were a very happy couple.
When, if at all, did that change?
With each visit, it changed. More of it was more not like an island life anymore. It was more of wines and more requests, simple things, toiletries.
He got
having things in
demoted.
place
No more
before,
raising
the family
objections.
came as well. So it, luggage changed. We got more and more luggage. Just things evolved and kind of mushroomed a bit.
How often would you see Ms. Hurd on the island when she was in a relationship with Mr. Depp?
I would, on average, every day, taking meals, cleaning houses, sometimes more.
And how often would Ms. Hurd come down to the island?
Hey, Mrs. O.
At the beginning, probably the same 2 or 3 times a year, sometimes 3 times with her friends and family and Johnny.
Abhorrent hooker is another.
During your interactions with
AH,
Ms. Hurd,
just
what,
saying.
if any, changes did you observe of Ms. Hurd?
Oh, we're back to the Heidi hairdo. Okay.
The taking care of the cooking the meals, we then had a chef come to cook. It was more of a formal island with chefs and housekeepers and things like that. Changed yeah, pretty much that.
So you're
Ms.
saying
Roberts,
she
were you on the island
bad,
in
bougie,
August
and uppity.
2014 for Mr.
Got it.
Depp's detox?
Yes, I was.
Who else was on the island?
I flew to Nassau and met Johnny, Amber, and Deb. I flew them back to the island, and then a couple of.
Ms. Roberts, I believe you froze there for a second. I heard you say Johnny, Amber, and Deb, and then you were cut off for a second.
A couple of days later, Dr. Kipper arrived.
What do you recall about that time that Mr. Depp came down to the island in August 2014?
That he was going to be here. They were going to be here for an extended period of time, at least a month or longer. And so we provisioned for a month for the trip. And after about a week or two, they left.
Y'all think Amber
Where
was
was
the
Mr. Depp
smoke
staying for the
monster
detox?
from Lost on that island?
In
Because
his
I
house.
do.
Is that the same house that was just shown in those videos earlier?
Yes, it was.
How often would you see Mr. Depp when he was on the island for the detox?
I was every day, but not face to face, just from delivering replenishing the house, delivering supplies, waters and things like that, linens and changing things out. So glimpsing him, not a conversation as it used to be.
How was Mr. Depp when you saw him?
He was always asleep on the couch.
While Ms. Hurd was on the island for the detox, what, if any, injuries did you observe on Ms. Hurd?
I didn't see anything.
After Mr. Depp and Ms. Hurd left the island, what happened next?
We would go into the house and break it down, empty out the refrigerators, change the linens, collect the laundry, straighten the house back up again.
After they left, what, if any, property damage did you observe?
There wasn't any.
Ms. Roberts, to what extent were you involved in Mr. Depp and Mrs. Hurd's wedding in February 2015 on the island?
Pretty much all aspects of it, logistics, work permits, getting things set up onto the island, to the island, staff, provisions, building of the tents and organizing transportation of guests to and from the island.
When did you first hear that Mr. Depp and Ms. Hurd were getting married on the island?
Objection calls for hearsay and relevance.
What's the relevance of when she heard?
I can move on.
Okay, next question.
What communications, if any, did you have with Ms. Hurd about the wedding?
We were given information on a schedule to better help me schedule and the provisioning of what would be on the island, beverages and food and things like that. We were given a schedule for daily things were going to happen each day, what time foods were, when people were coming in, how many people would be at meals, just so I had a better idea of planning of what was happening. It was detailed. It was what was happening each day and then it was the rehearsal night, and there would be, we had scheduled, like, it would be dinner, dancing, drugs, music, and then the wedding. We were very conscious about doing the wedding. The next day we were doing the wedding, the ceremony, and we were specific on time. Privacy was very important. We were very careful of people taking pictures. I think everybody was given disposable cameras and asked not to take pictures. I was concerned about that also, but we were doing the ceremony at sunset, so there really wouldn't be issue with what paparazzi people and things like that. And shortly when the ceremony was about to happen, it actually happened earlier than it was scheduled. The bridal party and Amber showed up early, and we were still scrambling for flowers and setting up and getting beverages and snacks down there. And there was a plane circling overhead, and it would just kept on circling and circling and taking pictures, and the ceremony proceeded earlier than was scheduled.
Did you observe Mr. Depp drinking alcohol at the wedding?
Objection leading.
All right, I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Ms. Roberts, as part of the provisioning for the wedding, did you order alcohol for the wedding?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
Ms. Roberts, what did you order for the wedding? in February 2015?
I was given a list of food. I was given a list of beverages for wines, champagnes. I was asked to have Dr. Pepper and sugar-free Red Bull here, because at that time that was what Mr. Depp or Johnny was drinking, was Dr. Pepper and sugar-free Red Bull.
Okay. Did you observe Ms. Hurd drinking alcohol at the wedding?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Who did you observe drinking alcohol at the wedding?
Pretty much everybody was drinking and doing shots and celebrating. It was a party.
Ms. Roberts, I'd like to discuss with you when Mr. Depp and Ms. Hurd were on the island in December 2015. Who came down to the island with them?
I flew to Nassau to meet them, which is what I normally do. I meet himself, Johnny, and whoever comes to the island. I fly to Nassau to meet them just to make sure that the transition is smooth with customs and immigration. So I flew to Nassau and I met Johnny, Amber, his children, and a friend of the children, and load the luggage onto the caravan plane, and we boarded the plane and came to the island. And a couple days into the trip, Alice and Greg and Alice's 3 children and a nanny came to the island as well.
Who are Alice and Greg?
Alice is a clothes designer and Greg was her partner, and I believe he's a photographer.
When did you first interact with Ms. Hurd when she came to the island in December 2015?
At the airport when I flew to Nassau to meet everybody. Usually when they come down off the plane, there's hugs and kisses and chatting for a couple minutes while the luggage is transferred.
How close were you to Ms. Hurd?
Close, hug, kiss, how are you, talk, same with everybody. So face to face, cheek to cheek.
What, if any, makeup did you observe Ms. Hurd wearing when you first interacted with her?
I don't recall if she was or was not wearing makeup. If she wore makeup, it was very natural. I don't think often she wore makeup on the island. I don't recall her wearing makeup.
What, if any, injuries did you notice on Ms. Hurd?
I didn't notice any.
Ms. Roberts, you mentioned that Gregory, a photographer, came to the island during that time. How often did you observe Gregory on the island?
I interacted every day because meals went down and changing the sheets and cleaning the room. So I see everybody every day there.
And when you saw him, what was he doing?
They were doing. There was a photo shoot on the island. Amber was wearing Amber was wearing Alice's clothes, and they were doing a photo shoot on the beach. And Greg was taking the pictures.
What, if anything, do you remember about that particular time that Mr. Depp and Ms. Hurd came down to the island? There was a incident between Johnny and Amber here during that trip. Okay, can you please describe that incident?
On the evening, we kind of called it a night. Dinner was finished. We wrapped everything up down here at the staff area in the kitchen. Myself and CJ came to the office later on that evening, and Johnny was in the office up here, and he was agitated, kind of walking back and forth. I'd asked him if he needed anything because I wasn't sure if he was up here to get something or was looking for something, which wouldn't be unusual for people to come up here. So he was here, talked for a couple minutes, the 3 of us, and a couple minutes later, Amber came into the office and the 3 of us were in the office, and Amber came in, and she was asking him to tell him to come back to the house. Please come back. I'm sorry, come back. And he stood here, reluctant to go, didn't want to go. And a little exchange back and forth. He left the office and got into his vehicle and started it up, and Amber went outside and stood in front of the vehicle, so that didn't drive away. Amber was standing in front of it. And again, she was asking him to don't leave. I'm sorry, come back to the house. After a couple minutes, she got in the vehicle and they left to go up back to their house.
What happened after they went back up to the house?
CJ and I were still in the office and weren't really sure, decided that maybe it would be best if we just drove up there just to make sure that everything was okay. And so we got in the golf cart and we drove up to their house, got into the parking lot, and his vehicle was in the parking lot, and you could hear them inside inside the house yelling, Amber yelling and Johnny answering back, and you could really hear what was being said. We stood there for a couple minutes, CJ and myself, and then you started to hear, it became audible. Amber was telling him that he was a washed up actor. He was going to die a fat, lonely old man. Then you heard, you hit me with a can. You heard Johnny say, you hit me with a can. And then he came down the steps and Amber was behind him and she had a bottle in her hand, was removed. And there was a brief pause, the moment, I think, of initial shock or uncertainty of why, that we were there. Neither Johnny nor Amber knew that we were there. He proceeded to walk back to the John Deere, and she again walked. He was sitting in the seat. Amber came up to him and was asking him to come back in the house, that she was sorry, please come back in the house. And he didn't come out of the seat, and she was hugging and kissing him, and I love you, I love you. She was telling him I loved you. He didn't react. Johnny sat there, eventually got out of the John Deere, and proceeded to start to walk away. At that time, Amber started to grab at him and his shirt, and trying to pull him back to the house, just basically viciously trying to pull him back and get him back into the house and yelling at him. And at that point, I was between them and felt it was best, and I was getting worried about what was going to happen, and it was best that I remove him from the situation. And so CJ took Amber back to the house, and I walked Johnny over to the cafe, which was basically 30 seconds away from the house, because it was the only place I could take him to at the time.
And you mentioned that Ms. Hurd was viciously trying to pull Mr. Depp back. Can you explain what you mean by that?
It was like clawing, grabbing at his clothes, grabbing his hair, trying to pull him back, like an angry, like he was leaving and come back. He couldn't leave in the vehicle because the keys had been taken out. So there wasn't a way for Johnny to drive away. The only way was for him to walk away, and it wasn't a pleasant situation of wanting him to not leave, and angry and yelling and just yelling, come back, don't leave, and things like that.
At any point, did Mr. Depp hit or touch Ms. Hurd?
Objection leading.
All right, I'll sustain the objection.
Ms. Roberts, how did Mr. Depp react to Ms. Hurd viciously grabbing him?
He didn't. He stood there with his arms by his side, and he didn't do anything.
So this
Ms.
is
Roberts, when you were
Tara
back in the
Roberts.
cafe with Mr.
She
Depp, what happened
managed
next?
the island for Johnny Depp.
I was concerned because I had heard him say that
Objection,
he'd gone.
objection to her being concerned. That's not
I'll
responsive to the
sustain as to
question.
concerned, all right?
Okay, Ms. Roberts, without testifying as how you felt, what did you observe when you went back to the cafe with Mr. Depp?
When we went back to the cafe, he had a mark across the bridge of his nose. I got a bag of ice to put on it so that it wouldn't swell, just to make sure that it wasn't bleeding. And he walked over to the love seat at the cafe, and he laid down and went to sleep. And CJ came back over, and I asked CJ to stay there for the remainder of the evening, for the remainder of the morning. And I left CJ inside the cafe, and I left Johnny on the couch.
They can, but
When did you next see Ms.
hold on
Hurd?
just a second. Let me pause this just real quick because I want to explain that.
That
So they can ask about it, but not the way that she did. So if it's your witness, which this is Johnny Depp's witness, and it's on direct testimony, if she witnessed anything physical from either Johnny Depp or Amber Heard, it has to come out of her mouth. They can't specifically ask that on direct. If it were cross-exam, they could. You're allowed to lead during cross-examination, but during direct examination, you're not. So she had to word it differently for it not to be leading.
that morning, I saw her that morning.
How close were you to Ms. Hurd when you interacted with her the next morning?
Conversation in
Hey, Betty's
way.
beauty. Good to see ya.
When you saw her, how did she appear?
See, that's a good example. When you
they
saw
had
her,
guests
how did she
leaving,
appear?
And it was kind of a normal morning, going down to the beach to see the guests leave.
She can't say.
What, if any, makeup was Ms. Hurd wearing?
Did Amber appear frazzled? Did Amber appear
Again, I'm not
angry?
sure if she wore makeup on the island. If it was very natural looking.
What, if any, injuries did you observe on Ms. Hurd?
I didn't observe any.
What, if any, injuries did you observe on Mr. Depp?
The marking across the bridge of his nose.
When did Ms. Hurd and Mr. Depp leave the island?
I believe they left that afternoon. The guests left in the morning, and I believe they left that afternoon.
After Ms. Hurd and Mr. Depp left the island, what did you do next?
Our usual, we go into the buildings and we break them down. We empty out the refrigerators, garbage, take all the perishables out of the house, straighten the place up, take the linens away, things like that.
What did you observe when you went through that process?
The island was as it was when they arrived. The only thing that was different was there was the liquid on the deck with a can, I believe, of mineral spirits or something there next to it, which had leaked out onto the deck. And then in the over the railing were paintbrushes and art supplies, paintbrushes, paint tubes, the jars that the paints are in, and those were all scattered in the bush.
Oh.
Ms. Roberts, when is the first time you provided testimony about this incident in December 2015?
I believe it was for another case in May 2020.
Ms. Roberts, how often have you seen Mr. Depp drink alcohol on the island?
He goes through periods of time where he's been here and he doesn't drink, and it's non-alcoholic Beck's or something like that. It varies. Sometimes he drinks when he's here, sometimes he doesn't.
How often have you seen Ms. Hurd drink alcohol on the island?
She drank wine. She drank wine with her drink was wine with dinner, maybe in the afternoon, but I know definitely with dinner.
Did you observe Ms. Hurd drinking alcohol when Mr. Depp was not drinking alcohol?
Objection leading.
No, sustained is leading.
Okay. How often have you seen Mr. Depp drunk?
It's like paint
I don't know.
thinner.
He's a huge tolerance for
You
alcohol.
you clean with
I haven't
it.
seen him passed out.
You clean
drunk,
paint with it, Amelia.
or anything like that.
Sparkles.
So,
Not paint thinner. That's not the
drinks.
right word.
but I haven't seen him passed out drunk.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Nothing further.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Roberts, the salary you receive for managing the Bahama Island is approximately $10,000 a month, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so that comes out to $120,000 a year? Correct? Okay. And you've
Yes.
been receiving that salary for many years, correct?
Correct.
Right. In fact, I think you got a raise to $10,010 in 2018. Do you remember that?
Hey, Renee
No,
knew.
I don't know the exact number, but I know I get that a month.
Okay. And that's in addition to all of the expenses, correct? For running the
The
island,
expenses,
of running the island.
I get a salary every month. I'm not sure what you're asking me.
So the other people that are on the island, to the extent they work, they get a different salary, right?
Yes.
Okay, and all of the expenses you have, you talked about what you have to do to provision the island and everything else and run it. All of those expenses are paid separately, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you said you've been managing this island for 15 years for Mr. Depp, is that correct?
Approximately, yes.
All right. Now, let's talk for a moment about those two videos that you testified to were part of the house. The first video was missing both the closet and the bathroom, correct?
Yes, Allie, 79. That's exactly what they're doing. Her testimony's paid for.
I don't remember. I'd have to look at it again.
All right. And the
There was
second,
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry. You didn't come through. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I think in the first video, the beads were the closet, and then there was the bathroom next to the closet.
Okay. That was
Isn't
the
that what you
second.
asked me?
That was the second video.
Oh.
Do you know who?
Sorry.
Do you know who took those videos?
Oh, I did.
Okay. When did you take those videos?
Oh, it would have to be, I'm not sure, a couple of years ago, maybe longer. I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you
Okay.
take those videos for the
Oh, good,
UK
Renee.
trial?
Good.
I don't recall if it was for that.
Right. Is there a reason that the closet and the bathroom were left out of the first video?
No, I stood in the house and did a circle around of the house.
Okay. Who asked you to make that video?
I'm not sure.
Was it Mr. Waldman? Adam Waldman?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Can't recall?
I can't remember who asked me. No, I
Okay.
can't.
Okay. Now the second video, that shows the closet and then there's a door there. Would you agree? Bathroom?
Next to the closet, yes.
Okay. And we don't have a video of the bathroom, correct?
I don't believe there was a video of the bathroom.
And no one asked you to make a video of the bathroom, correct?
Objection relevance.
I'll overrule it now. Good.
correct?
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure if anybody asked me to, I don't believe I videotaped the bathroom.
She
And my
testifies
question
like I
was,
do. Oh,
no one
sorry.
asked you to videotape the bathroom, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, let's talk for a moment about the logistics of the island. So Mr. Depp's house, we've seen the inside of, and you said that the cafe was a 30-second walk, I think you said. How many yards?
I don't know. I walk it. It's just outside his house through the parking lot and walkway to the cafe.
Okay.
It-
And
I
the,
don't know.
okay, and the cafe is where Mr. Depp would regularly have his meals, correct?
Correct. All the guests would have their meals there.
Okay, including Mr. Depp and Ms. Hurd if she was there, and their children, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and
For
then.
dinners, yes.
and
Correct.
then
Literally
you were
everybody ate at the
located On
cafe.
the other side of the island, correct? That's where you stay?
Or I stay in the middle of the island, yes.
Okay, how far away is that from the cafe and the house?
Objection compound.
I'll sustain the objection if you want.
How far away is it from the house?
Where I stay,
Yes,
probably a 3-minute golf cart ride,
okay,
5-minute walk.
okay.
All right.
And then when other guests come, I think you were talking about tents. Do they stay in tents?
No, the tents were erected for the wedding, and then they were dismantled. And sometimes we would erect them if we were asked to, just in case somebody wanted to stay there. But people didn't stay in the tents; they stayed in the buildings here.
Okay, so how much accommodation can you handle in the buildings for other guests? I'm not talking about the house, Mr. Depp's house, we've seen that. But how many people can actually be accommodated in the buildings?
We have a 2-bedroom yurt on Brando Beach. We have a beach house which has the bed in it, and then we have what we call a roundhouse, which has a bed in it as well.
Okay, now, when Mr. Depp and Ms. Hurd were visiting, whether they had the children there or not, typically, would you bring the meals to the cafe for each of the meals?
Huh?
No, sometimes I would take them to the house. It depended on where they wanted to eat.
All right, and then typically, would you join them for the meal, or would you leave the meal and then come back and clean up afterwards?
Objection compound.
All right. I'll sustain the objection.
All right, we'll take that one at a time. Typically, would you bring the meals to them?
Myself or one of the workers here would take the meals.
Okay, how often was it you that would take them?
How often? Maybe every other day, every day. It depended on how, if people were eating in their buildings or eating together.
All right, and would you stay and eat the meal with them, or would you leave?
If we were invited for dinner, we would all eat together. Usually we would take the food to the places and leave.
And then would you be called to come pick them up?
No, we would sometimes go back in the evenings on our own and clean up and turn some of the lights off. And sometimes we would do it in the morning. It depended on what was happening.
Okay, so other than bringing the meals, and it could be you or somebody else, how often did you interact with Mr. Depp and Ms. Hurd during the days when they were on the island?
On average, every day.
In what context other than delivering the meals and picking them up?
Oh, just see if anything was needed, if everything was all right, things like that. Generally passing them if they were walking or in the office or on the beach.
Okay. Now, would it be fair to say that you weren't spending 24/7 with them?
No, I didn't live with them, no.
Okay. And would it be fair to say that you don't know what they were doing during the times that you weren't passing them by or bringing meals?
Yes, unless they were on the beach,
Okay.
then I would know, but
So you wouldn't know what happened, what would be taking place within the house, for example, when you weren't there? Correct?
correct,
And you wouldn't know whether Mr. Depp was taking drugs, correct?
correct.
And you wouldn't know whether Mr. Depp was drinking, correct?
I would only know by cleaning up.
And you wouldn't know, well, you wouldn't know from cleaning up necessarily whether it was Mr. Depp, Ms. Hurd, or somebody else, would you?
It
Objection,
depends on the
compound.
beverage or what was-
Overruled, I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Please continue.
Unless I would know what it was by what was in the garbage or left out of who consumed or what was consumed, I would be able to know.
Okay. And you wouldn't know what arguments, if there were any, were taking place in that house behind closed doors, right?
Correct,
And you wouldn't know whether there was any kind of physical abuse that was taking place behind those closed doors, correct?
I wouldn't know, correct.
Now, let me just take you for a moment to the December 2015 timeframe. How much advance notice are you typically given for when Mr. Depp and his entourage are going to arrive and for how long they're going to stay?
Objection, compound.
All right, I'll sustain the objection.
All right, let's break it down. How much notice are you given when Mr. Depp and his entourage are coming?
It varies. Sometimes it's a couple days, sometimes it's a couple weeks.
So how much notice were you given in December of 2015 to who would be coming for Christmas on the Bahama Island?
I believe sometime in November
Okay.
for
And,
that trip.
all right. And in November, how many people were you told were coming for Christmas on the island?
I don't recall how many people.
It was a lot more than Amber, Johnny, Lily Rose, Jack, and Lily Rose's boyfriend, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
In fact, it was Amber's parents, correct?
I believe so.
And it was Rocky Pennington and Josh Drew, correct?
I believe they were on the list.
And Rocky Pennington's parents?
Yes, I believe they were on the list.
Do you recall them canceling?
Objection, hearsay.
I recall,
How is that hearsay?
I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
there was a change to the guests.
So,
you
Christine,
learn
this
of that?
is, hang on just a second. I want to pause so I don't talk over her. This is Tara Roberts. She is the estate manager on the island. She's worked for Johnny Depp for like 15 years. Sorry, I don't want to talk over her.
I don't recall, maybe a couple weeks after, maybe it's beginning of December, maybe middle of December.
Do
I'm
you,
not sure.
do you recall if it was after December 15?
I don't recall.
Did you think that was a little strange that here these people were going to be at
Objection.
Christmas on the island and suddenly they cancel?
Objection, relevance.
I think it's highly relevant.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
We know
What-
you think it's highly
what, if anything,
relevant.
were
That's
you
why you
told
asked.
About why they.
De nada.
Objection, hearsay.
Party opponent admission.
Well, if you
Well,
want
you
a
don't know.
foundation for that.
Okay. Who told you that Amber's parents, her best friend and fiance and her best friend's parents were suddenly canceling coming for Christmas on the island.
Objection compound.
I'll allow that. Go ahead.
I don't know who told me, but I did receive I did receive information that they weren't coming and there were somebody else was coming instead.
And who was that somebody else coming instead?
That it would be Alice and it would be Alice and Greg and the children and the nanny.
And they were coming later, right?
They would be joining. That I think was the words.
Okay. So on the December trip, you testified about a few arguments between Amber and Johnny, right? Do you recall that testimony?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You weren't present when Johnny sustained the gash on his nose, correct?
I wasn't there. No.
Okay. And you weren't present when the mess was made through the paints that you've described, correct?
No.
And so you don't know whether there had been a physical altercation and that led to throwing a paint can to try to slow down Johnny, right?
What?
No, I just heard yelling in the house.
Okay, but that yelling in the house wasn't necessarily the same time, was it? You don't know, do you?
No, it was all in the same. Okay, no.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the
Who
summer of
Here has thrown
2013.
something to slow somebody
Are you
down,
aware that Paul Bettany claims he's never met Amber?
aside from playing a Mario Kart.
Objection relevance.
Because
And calls for
you're,
hearsay.
Relevance is
you're
to
allowed
justify
to
that
do
he was
that
there on the
in
island.
Mario
And calls for
Kart,
hearsay.
not in real
I
life.
can ask the question and see if she says.
All right, I'll allow the question. Go ahead.
Can you repeat it?
Are you aware that Paul Bettany has said that he never met Amber Hurd?
No, I'm unaware. I
Okay.
don't know that.
Well, let's stay on the summer of 2013 if we can. Do you have a recollection of Amber and Johnny, Lily Rose and Jack taking one final trip on the yacht that Johnny was going to be selling to J.K. Rowling?
I don't know what year that was. I don't know what year that was, but I do remember the yacht being sold.
If I tell you it was July of 2013, does that help refresh your recollection? July 9?
Yeah,
All right. Now,
July, no, it doesn't. I just know the yacht was sold.
okay, and you made arrangements, did you not, for a captain to captain the yacht and for them to go out on the yacht?
No, I didn't have any responsibility for the yacht and the crew on the yacht.
Okay. Do you have a recollection of being called because Lily Rose and Jack were upset and they wanted to leave the yacht and have a helicopter take them away?
Objection, hearsay, and compound.
I'm asking whether she has a recollection of this.
I'll allow the question.
Can you ask me it again?
Do you have a recollection of Lily Rose and Jack being upset on the yacht and wanting to leave it immediately, so you arranged for a helicopter to come in to fly them away with Amber?
Objection, compound.
I'll allow it. Okay. Let's just see.
I don't know if Lily Rose and Jack were upset. I do know that I did arrange for transportation off the island at the time.
And in fact, Amber went with Lily Rose, correct?
It was Amber and her friend and Lily Rose.
Okay. And Jack decided at the last minute to stay back, correct?
I don't know if he decided last minute. He stayed.
Okay. Do you recall Lily Rose telling you that she was upset because her father was drinking and trying to hide it from him?
Objection, hearsay.
All right.
I'm asking whether she has a
I'll
recollection.
sustain the objection. to
Okay.
that.
Then I'll ask the next one. Do you recall Mr. Depp passing out in the sand face first?
I recall that he was passed out on the beach. He was out on the beach. Yes.
Hey, silly Nana.
And do you
Good to see
recall
you. I haven't
Jack
seen you in a
calling
long
you
time.
because he was concerned?
Objection hearsay.
That's just asking if he called. I haven't asked what he said.
No, you did. I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Do you have a recollection of Jack being present when Mr. Depp was passed out face first in the sand?
Yes.
And do you have a recollection of Jack being upset?
I don't have a recollection of him being upset.
Do you have a recollection of him being happy about it?
No, I didn't speak with Jack about it.
Okay. But you recall that Mr. Depp was passed out face first in the sand, correct?
Objection asked and answered.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
All right, thank you.
Wow.
Let's talk about makeup for a moment. So you don't know what type of makeup regimen Amber uses every day, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in fact, you don't know, you said at one point you're not sure, but it's a natural look. Do you recall that?
I just
Yes,
said
I
it like
do.
5 minutes ago. So
And
yes.
would you agree that there are a number of different types of makeup you can use that would still give you a natural look?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'll allow it.
What?
I'm guessing there is. Yes.
Okay, okay. And there's sun in the Bahamas, right?
Last I checked, there's sun
Most of the
everywhere.
time.
Do you know what Amber wears for sunscreen?
I think it was at one point I had a brand Shishido or something like that was on the island that we provided.
And do you know whether Amber brought her own as well?
I don't know.
Do you know whether Amber had a skin condition?
I wasn't told.
Okay. But I take it you didn't ask.
She is the
No, I
house
wouldn't have
manager. Why
asked
would
if
she
she had a
ask
skin
that
condition.
Okay.
of anybody?
Um,
For Pete's sake, this is ridiculous. I'm sorry, you guys. It's
The
not
wedding.
professional. Good night,
The
Chick
wedding was
Tracy.
planned at sunset, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, it went forward at sunset, correct?
It went earlier. It was earlier than sunset.
So your recollection is that there's no sunset pictures at the wedding?
I mean,
Okay.
there was sunset pictures.
Okay.
But that's not what
So,
you asked her.
Last couple questions. The makeup or not makeup, you were asked whether you observed any injuries on Amber in the December 2015 timeframe. Do you believe Amber would cover up bruises to hide them from the kids?
Oh my gosh. Calls for speculation. Object to that.
Objection calls for speculation.
There you go.
I'll sustain this.
Do you have any understanding, based on your knowledge of Amber, whether she would try to cover up any bruises or cuts
Same
to
objection.
keep them from the kids?
I'll sustain the objection.
Yeah, keep it. Yeah, that's ridiculous. Don't be
You
asking her
said
that.
you didn't believe that Amber was wearing much makeup, but you said she participated in a photo shoot in December 2015. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Do you know whether Amber was wearing any makeup for a photo shoot?
I'm not sure the part that I saw, she was in and out of the water.
Do you know whether Amber would want to show bruises or cuts in a photo shoot?
Objection.
calls
Calls
for
for
I'll
speculation.
sustain the objection.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
All
Yeah.
right, redirect. Redirect.
Hey, sugar beet.
Ms. Roberts, how many times have you seen Mr. Depp consume drugs?
Objection, leading.
All right, sustained.
Yikes, on bikes. These women are going at it. All right,
Ms.
girls.
Bernhoff asked you about Mr. Depp passed out on the beach. How would you describe Mr. Depp when you saw him on the beach?
He was passed out. I picked him up and brushed him off, and he sat. I left him underneath the. I believe he was in a hammock, and I believe he'd fallen asleep, or he was asleep, and the hammock had overturned. And I picked him up and brushed him off, and left him underneath the lanai with Jack.
Okay, no further questions.
All
Thank
right,
you,
is
Ms.
this witness
Roberts.
subject to recall, Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Listen, I don't think
Alright,
we
so
should be
Ms.
too
Roberts, since you're subject to recall, do
exactly,
not discuss your
sugar beet.
testimony with anybody, and just do not watch anything about this case, okay, ma'am?
Hammocks are sometimey at best.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And let me just be clear.
All
I
right,
can
your
trip
next
over
witness.
air. So let's be fair here.
Dr. Shannon Curry. She'll come right now.
Dr. who?
Shannon Curry,
Can you, is it C-U-R-R-Y?
Curry. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have no idea who this is either or what she's about to testify to, y'all. So this going to be a surprise for all of us. I think so. I agree. Nonstop Mom. I think that's exactly what he's doing. Because like, I don't know where the smoking section is at the courthouse. If I would imagine it's not anywhere close by. And so I feel like he needs, this is nerve-wracking, you know. I have tripped over air, y'all. I can't tell you how many times I have tripped over air and caught myself only to see all of the animals judging me like, Mom, what are you doing with your life? I mean, you know, look, if I saw me trip over, I even judge myself. I just can't see the look on my face. I'm sure I have a judgy look on my face too. Like, who trips over air? Me. That's who. It's how I roll. I'm a clumsy gal. And I would not attempt Mimi's nights, a nap in a hammock. No, thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case or penalty of law? I do.
Good morning, Dr. Curry.
Good morning.
I'm Wayne Dennison. Could you state your full name for the record?
Shannon Curry.
What do you do for a living?
I am a clinical and forensic psychologist.
Oh.
What's your educational background?
I started college at Georgetown University. I then transferred to the University of California, Irvine, where I received my bachelor's degree in psychology and social behavior. I completed my master's degree in psychology at Pepperdine University. I went on to complete my doctoral degree in clinical psychology at Pepperdine University, which included several training rotations at different practicum sites. Those are essentially clinical rotations we do to learn various types of psychology. You learn how to do psychological assessment, counseling, etc., and you do that in a variety of different settings. And then I completed a year-long doctoral internship at an American Psychological Association accredited doctoral internship. You do this year before you get your degree. And that was at Tripler Army Medical Center. It's traditionally a military internship. They did admit 2 civilians. I was lucky enough to be one of them. I then completed 2 years of postdoctoral training at Hawaii State Hospital, a locked forensic psychology facility. And that's where you essentially have individuals with severe mental illness who have committed crimes.
Have you done
Ooh,
any
this
additional?
finna be good. I'm right.
research?
I agree.
I have. So after I completed my doctorate.
Hold
and
on.
my
I'm gonna pause
postdoctoral
her. I don't
training,
want to miss any of
I
this.
obtained it's called a
Okay. Hold on just a sec. Come on. Oh, click back over. I heard five more weeks. I want to highlight though this because I want people to if they watch the replay, they'll know. So I heard that the trial is expected to be about 5 more weeks. Yes. 5. All right. Here we go.
doctoral Master of Science degree in clinical psychopharmacology. That is for partial fulfillment of prescription privileges, meaning that it's part of what we need to
No,
be able to prescribe
this
medications
is
as a
all still
psychologist, as
Johnny Depp's
psychologists don't traditionally prescribe.
side.
And we can
This
do
is
that
his
with
case.
certain military jurisdictions in other states. I also obtained advanced training in the Gottman method of couples therapy. I completed all 3 levels of training, and then I'm also a Gottman educator for several workshops involving helping parents learn how to prepare to bring their baby home and helping couples without serious problems improve their relationships.
Eric, what's the Gottman method?
The Gottman method is a highly research-based method of couples therapy. It's very structured, so different than what many people expect when they think about couples therapy. I always tell my clients I don't want them to come in, just tell each other all their problems, and then have an awkward, silent drive home. In this therapy, they come in, they complete a really structured assessment in the beginning. So they complete a bunch of questions. It gives me a ton of information about their relationship before we even get started, and really identifies the areas we're going to target with structured interventions during each session. I think of it almost like a class.
Okay. Did you get, in the course of your education, any specialized training?
Any what?
Specialized training?
I did. So my internship specifically was dedicated to essentially working with post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic stress. A lot of my training has been with psychological assessment and testing. And then my training during practicum and then in my postdoctoral work was dedicated to working with trauma populations and also conducting forensic psychological assessments. Oftentimes, forensic psychological assessments actually refers to doing testing and an interview and a couple other things for purposes related to law. So it's the application of psychology to the courts, to legal issues. And sometimes that also involves doing assessments for the military to determine whether somebody has sustained a mental disability after combat.
You indicated that you did some work at Tripler. What's Tripler and what's the work you did?
So Tripler Army Medical Center is a hospital in Honolulu, Hawaii. If anybody's ever gotten to have a vacation in Hawaii, it's a giant pink building there. And it's one of the top training sites for military psychologists. I was very, very lucky to be able to train there. They have wonderful funding and a lot of new research going on, particularly for PTSD, but really for all areas of mental health. While I was there, I did rotations in family psychology, so doing family therapy. I worked with children, but I also did a neuropsychology rotation, learning really the ins and outs of advanced psychological assessment, identifying not just mental issues, mental illness, but also traumatic brain injuries after trauma, and doing those PTSD evaluations, and then also working with service members who were struggling with a whole host of issues, military stressors, normal life stressors, and then also those who sustained tremendous trauma from combat.
Do you still continue to work with the military?
I do, actually. My practice is very focused on military service members, veterans, and their families.
Okay. What work have you done in prior litigation matters?
Well, most of my litigation, if we're talking about civil work, that has mostly been reports. So this is my first time testifying in a civil matter. The majority of my forensic work has been in criminal law or providing psychological assessments. And then I produce a really methodical report, which is typically reviewed by a judge, and a determination is made, or usually there's a settlement beforehand.
Do you work in connection with any particular courts?
I do. So I am actually not sure if I'm on the list anymore in Honolulu, but I am a certified forensic evaluator for the state of Hawaii, which means that I have been appointed by the court to conduct evaluations for matters that are presented. And then I'm also on the list of forensic evaluators in several courts in Southern California. And then I'm contracted by the military, the Department of Defense, now and again for evaluations of PTSD from service members.
Okay, you mentioned PTSD a couple of times now.
Yes.
What are you referring to there?
So PTSD is a mental illness. It can develop after a person has been exposed to a traumatic event. And our diagnostic statistical manual, the DSM, is sort of the authoritative manual of mental illnesses. It's considered our Bible of mental illness. We go there for diagnoses. And according to that, there's a specific type of trauma that a person must experience for them to be able to qualify for a diagnosis of PTSD. And that's an event that is life-threatening. It can also involve sexual assault, and you can experience that either directly, but you can also be traumatized if you've seen it happen to somebody else, or if it's happened unexpectedly or violently to somebody close to you, a family member or a friend. And then there's also a provision for people who are first responders. If they're encountering really traumatic information regularly, that qualifies as a trauma. Now, there are a number of symptoms that can develop.
Sure. We'll talk about that some
Okay.
more. Do you hold any credentials relevant to the work that you do?
Well, I am a licensed psychologist.
Where?
In California and Hawaii.
Okay, and any other certifications or other credentials?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, other than the training with the Gottman method of couples therapy.
Okay. Have you worked with the Hawaii Department of Courts and Corrections?
Yes, I have.
In what capacity?
Well, so that I guess would be a credential. So I am a certified forensic evaluator for the state of Hawaii.
In connection with your doctorate, was there a research component?
There was. So would you like me to tell you about it?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I conducted a research study while I was at Pepperdine completing my doctorate. It's called a dissertation. So when you're obtaining your doctorate, you contribute something to the scientific field that you're in. And typically that involves doing what we call novel science. So you're doing an experiment, you're finding out new information and helping the field progress. So I did research in Peru, and I was essentially looking at the effectiveness of a therapy intervention there for kids who were growing up in this community called Ayacucho, which was exposed to 20 years of guerrilla warfare, the longest guerrilla war in the history of the world. And there were a lot of issues in that community, tremendous trauma. And my research was around finding interventions that were really effective for that community.
Where do you work now?
I work for the Curry Psychology Group.
What does the Curry Psychology Group do?
We're a multi-specialty mental health center. So we have neuropsychologists who do testing for kids. We have therapists, individual therapists, couples therapists, family therapists. We even have a meditation teacher. We basically try to meet the needs of our community, and we highly specialize in working with military personnel and their families.
Yeah. Who's the Curry and Curry Psychology Group?
I'm Dr. Curry.
How many people work for you?
As of right now, I believe it's 13.
How long have you been doing this kind of work?
For about 15 years.
How much of your therapy practice focuses on treating individuals?
I would say about half of it is individuals, half is couples.
Okay. Do you do any training of students?
I do.
What's that?
So we have several unlicensed professionals at our office, and they're earning their additional hours so that they can get licensed. So they're able to see clients, and then I meet with them regularly to supervise them, discuss their cases, provide them with information about different diagnoses, interventions, and treatment methods.
How did you get involved in this case?
I was contacted by Ms. Camille Vasquez, one of the attorneys for Mr. Depp.
Okay. And what was the nature of the contact?
Ms. Vasquez called me and indicated that she might be interested in having me meet the legal team so that I could discuss my expertise and possibly provide my opinions related to the matter.
What were you asked to provide expert opinion on?
So initially, my role that I understood at the time was to review the case materials and provide my opinions regarding anything that I noticed that was consistent or even inconsistent with the psychological science that exists today on intimate partner violence in Mr. Depp and Ms. Hurd's relationship.
All right, you used a phrase there, intimate partner violence. What are you talking about?
So there are a multitude of different definitions depending on the source or the state. But essentially, intimate partner violence is abuse. It could be physical, psychological, and it's from one partner to another in an intimate relationship.
Okay. Did your role in this case evolve over time?
Yes, it shifted. So I was retained at the end of January 2021, and then had just barely begun to review the documents. The case was postponed, and then in October 2021, I was asked by counsel to provide a psychological evaluation of Ms. Hurd.
Okay. Were you ever asked to do a psychological evaluation of Mr. Depp?
Hey, Shamida.
No.
Okay.
What types of documents did you consider in this analysis?
So I reviewed quite a few documents as part of my evaluation. That included all of the case documents, Ms. Hurd's medical records by Dr. Kipper, her prior mental health treatment records. I believe I reviewed records from Dr. Amy Banks, Dr. Bonnie Jacobs, Dr.
Hey, Coolest
Cohen,
Reviews.
Connell Cohen, and also a significant portion of my review involved notes from Nurse Erin Filati, at the time Erin Borum, who spent a significant time with Ms. Hurd in her direct company. I also reviewed exhibits, quite a few audio recordings, a video recording, several video recordings, or possibly photographs. I might be getting them confused. and multiple witness statements, testimony, and declarations.
Did there come a time when you met directly with Ms. Hurd?
Yes, I did. So in conducting my evaluation, I met with Ms. Hurd on 2 separate dates, December 10th and December 17th, 2021.
Approximately how much time have you spent with Ms. Hurd?
So the evaluation, we spent 12 hours directly with one another. However, there were more hours involved in the evaluation with some breaks. So we spent 7 hours together on the first day, December 10th. Not necessarily together because there was a 1-hour lunch break and about a half hour with breaks split up through the day. And then on the 17th, we spent a little more than 8 hours in the evaluation from start to finish, with a 1-hour break and another half hour of breaks distributed throughout the day.
As a result of the work that you performed, did you form any opinions with respect to Ms. Hurd?
I did.
What were those opinions?
The results of Ms. Hurd's evaluation supported 2 diagnoses: borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder.
What is a diagnosis?
A diagnosis is a way that that psychologists, psychiatrists, anybody in the mental health field thinks about a disorder. It helps us to communicate a set of symptoms that a person is experiencing. And along with that set of symptoms, it tells other professionals a lot about how those symptoms might have developed, how that person might behave, perceive the world. It also drives treatment. The real purpose is to determine what sort of interventions will be most effective for the person.
I don't know if
Previously,
that's a
you
good
made
thing or a
reference
bad thing,
to,
Coolest Reviews, but I'm glad you're here.
DSM-5. What's
Yes.
that?
So the DSM-5, that stands for the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, version 5. And that contains every diagnosis we use in mental health. And it's the authoritative manual of mental diagnoses.
Is performing diagnoses something you typically do in your line of work?
Yes.
Thank you. So you referenced 2 personality disorders. What's a personality disorder?
To understand a personality disorder, I think it can be helpful first to kind of define personality. So personality, something we take for granted, but these are the traits, the characteristics, the way we think, we feel, and we act that make us who we are. And these traits are pretty stable over time and across situations. We might, be sure to mind our P's and Q's when we're meeting somebody new, but overall, if somebody were to describe us or if we were to describe ourselves, we have a pretty good sense of who we are. Sometimes an easy way to think of it is imagining how you might describe a brother or sister or a child if you have children. Their personalities are pretty clear to you. A personality disorder is some sort of dysfunction in those enduring traits. So as opposed to other types of mental illness, when you think about something like depression, that's episodic. It comes and it goes. And when it's treated with medication, it can pretty much be completely mitigated or minimized in a person's life, and their personality is still there, separate from the depression. When we have a personality disorder, there are going to be disturbances in several different areas that are visible in almost all different facets of their life.
Is there a manner in which personality disorders are commonly diagnosed?
Yes, so they can be diagnosed in a treating environment. Treating psychologist or a therapist or a psychiatrist simply does a diagnostic interview, which involves assessing multiple areas of a person's history back down through childhood.
I'm going to stop you for a second.
Yes.
What's a treating environment?
Sometimes I'll slip into these words. I apologize. So a treating environment in therapy, if somebody is going in for treatment, the mental health provider will ask them questions to find out what sort of symptoms they've experienced and what sort of things have occurred in their life that might be consistent with these disorders, or rule out these disorders, prove that there is no reason for these disorders to be considered. They might also pay attention to their observations of the client over time and new information the client provides them. The most reliable way, however, to ever come about a diagnosis really is through a comprehensive psychological assessment. And I might use the words assessment, examination, testing interchangeably. They all mean the same thing. It's combining information from multiple different sources. One main source is psychological testing using validated objective measures. That means that they've been tested, they've been shown to be accurate for testing what you want to test, and in the environment you're testing. So there are measures specific for court environments where someone might respond differently. You integrate that with the same interview I was telling you that people would do for therapy. We do that as well. And then in a courtroom setting, you're going to look at all the legal records, all of those documents, corroborating information to sort of check your hypotheses that may be developing, and also check against the examinee's statements to confirm whether you have enough evidence of a certain diagnosis.
So what's a clinical interview?
A clinical interview is a very comprehensive interview. It includes
Okay, I just wanted to stop you guys right there just real quick before she really gets into it with what she knows and what the results were more in depth. Because one thing that you guys should definitely check out is there's a documentary on Netflix, Conversations with the is it Conversations with the Killer? I think Joe Berlinger does it. Anyway, the newest one is John Wayne Gacy. It's his tapes. And what's interesting about that is when John Wayne Gacy is speaking and telling his side of the story, he talks about the times that he has been evaluated and what he says the results are versus what the actual results are. And it's done really well. So you can sort of watch that and gauge really what she's speaking about here. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys because we're a little bit behind because of my pausing, but I just wanted you guys to check that out because it really is an excellent resource for really understanding what she's talking about here.
person's entire life history, as well as very specifically looks at any symptoms they might have. This can start as far back as birth. You might find out if there were any issues with their delivery, any genetic issues, any intellectual issues. How did they do? What was their home life like? How was discipline handled? What's their relationship with their primary caregivers? Were they raised by an aunt, an uncle, their parents? How many siblings do they have? How do they get along with their siblings? How many times did they have to move? Was there any abuse? Did they have any really significant life experiences that come to mind when they think about their childhood? How were they as a student? Did they need special services? Did they get in trouble at school? And you do this, you continue on high school. What were their hobbies? Did they play sports? How many friends did they have? Did they have any trouble keeping those friendships? Then you get into adulthood. Did they go to college? Did they not go to college? How come? What sort of jobs have they held? How did those jobs go? How did they end? That's always an important question. What sort of romantic relationships have they been involved in? How do they identify sexually, culturally? Let's see, what else? What sort of symptoms have they experienced? You go through the entire gamut of some of the main symptoms. You might screen for depression, any disorganized thinking. That means thinking that isn't necessarily in touch with reality, and any current distress they may be having today.
How did you conclude that Ms. Hurd suffers from the personality disorders that you identified?
So there was information that supported it from multiple sources. I conducted testing, including one of the main tests that I used. She obtained scores that were consistent with those diagnoses. And then I also, there was evidence of those diagnoses in her records and in her self-report.
Okay.
All right, Council, why don't we just go ahead and pause for a second while we go ahead and take our morning recess, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take our 15-minute morning recess. Do not discuss the case and do not do any outside research, okay?
Your Honor, when would you like to reconvene?
Give me a moment, sir. All right. And doctor, since you're on the stand now, do not discuss your testimony with anybody to include the attorneys at this point, okay?
Understood.
All right, let's go ahead and we'll come back at 11:45, okay? All right,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Your Honor.
Okay. So, wowie, wow, wow, wow. I mean, where's that question that I wanted to enter or that I wanted to talk about? I know Amelia is the one that asked it or said it. I hold on a sec. Asking about that this was allowed. So, frankly, I am not I feel like this is being allowed because it goes to Amber Heard's credibility, frankly. And I think that's why this was done. And also, can I just take a moment to say this? 12 hours of evaluation. Now, listen, I know it wasn't 12 hours consistently. She's already testified to that. But look, you're in a place for 12 hours. Okay. And even if you're taking breaks and also having lunch and whatnot and all the things, right? You're still aware that you're in that place. So it's not like it leaves you, you know what I mean? And to do that, that's very, very, very intense. And yes, she absolutely, Lupe, she did. She sat down with her and evaluated her over several hours, like two, I think it was 2 different sessions. And for lengthy periods of time. I mean, yeah, I was just saying that there were breaks or whatever, but bro, that you're still there. Like you know what I mean? It's like being at court, right? You're not testifying the entire time, obviously, but you're still there. It's not like you're not aware of where you are or why you're there. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, she absolutely 100%. And you know that the defense fought probably very well. I don't know for sure, but it seems like they would fight to keep this out. But perhaps this is what I'm curious about. I'm wondering if his side had Amber evaluated, but she did not evaluate Johnny Depp, right? So now I'm curious then if conversely, they have a clinical forensic psychologist who evaluated Johnny Depp. That would be interesting. I feel like they probably did, and I want to know what they have to say. I'm wondering though, like, let's say they did have the same thing done with respect to Johnny Depp, right? Then if that's the case, I wonder if they will call the person that did this. The defense calls them, because I'm just very, 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 I need to know all of the things. And like 5 weeks. This trial is supposed to go on for 5 more weeks. And the thing is, they could probably shorten it if they had court on Friday instead of taking Friday off. And I wonder how that came to be, that this was, you know, okay that they were going to do this. Because I would be like, no, that's not acceptable. I want court all 5 days of the week. And that's that. Let's get this done and over with. This has been a long time coming. It's cost a lot of money, and let's just be done. But no, this is why it's going to take so long, because obviously maybe she has a different, she's probably in court though. The judge is probably working on that Friday. Maybe that's when she handles other caseload. I don't know. But anyway, or maybe she needs Friday. I know Nonstop Mom, and it's a virtue like that I don't clearly possess frequently. I mean, I have it sometimes. I can be patient with children. I can be patient with animals. That's about it. I mean, I can be patient with people sometimes. Not all the time, not frequently. Also, I wonder if maybe she uses Friday to like handle all the filings and the orders and stuff like that. Maybe that's what happens. I don't know. I just want to be very sure that they are using the time wisely. Also a trait that I don't possess. All right, I'm going to skip forward. So we're at the current point, because we're not going to miss anything, because obviously they're on a break. And they're not going to be back till 11:45, and it's 11:37 a.m. So just to let you guys know, I'll stream the morning up until the lunch break, and then I'll stop. And then tonight at 9 Eastern, I'll go live. Hey, while we're waiting, y'all want to watch the clip video again? Put a 1 in chat if you want to watch the clip video again. I can get that for you. Yeah, there you go, Sugar Beet. Perfectly explained. If you're paying me to be patient, I'll have all the patience of a saint. If you're not paying me to be patient, forget about it. Okay, that's enough for me. All right, let's play it. All right, ready? Here we go. Watch it mess up. StreamYard's a little laggy today. Come on. I need to quit clicking. Oh boy. All right, I think it's going. Let's see. Come on. It's a little laggy. Just be patient, Jennifer. That's really for me. I need to be patient. What is it doing? Ah, cripes. Huh. At the rate that this is going, it's probably not going to be able to play by the time they get back. All right, let me try it now. I'm just going to click it once and hopefully it works. And I quit clicking. That's probably another part of the problem. I can try. Give me just a second. I don't know what my computer is doing lately. It's really giving me a lot of fits. I probably need to go through it. Because it's not wanting to show this, or it's like frozen. I don't even know if you guys can even hear me. Ugh. Hold on. Oh, you can hear me being annoyed? Yeah, I'm freaking annoyed. Like, just give it a sec. I can probably try to play the clip. Hope for peace after. Before we go for the day. I'll play it for you guys for sure. What is this thing doing? Hmm. Okay, you guys. So I had to use my phone just to make sure that the stream kept going because obviously it booted. I think there was another update, which I have changed the schedule of updating so that it doesn't do this during peak hours. But then I guess I started going live earlier than I normally do. And so I guess it messed with the peak hour or whatever. I'm so annoyed. So it just have to be mainly me. I have to be patient, to wait for this to do whatever the heck it's doing. I'm super annoyed. And I don't like using my phone because remember I told you guys I messed up the earbud jack because I keep getting the earbuds caught up on door knobs and drawer pulls. And yeah, I'm a big mess. Super professional over here at the ward. At least we can get a few laughs out of it. Oh my goodness, this is taking forever. Oh, there it goes. Let's see what's happening. All right, it's working better. It is, Amelia. It's super obnoxious and annoying. And, some of it's me because I don't pay attention to the settings like I should on my computer to make sure that this doesn't occur. But yeah. The only thing I'm really good at paying attention to on here is like clearing out stuff that I've downloaded so that I'm not like my memory isn't full and all that, and the hard drive doesn't get full. That I'm good about doing, and emptying the recycle bin. That I'm good at doing. But paying attention to the various settings, not so much. Not so much. This is normally I do tuck the cord into my shirt, but sometimes I get busy and I'm just this is like sometimes I'm listening to YouTube, right? I have my headphones in. I'm not cleaning, I'm not doing anything. I just go into the kitchen to refill like my drink, okay? And all of my drawers have those pulls. And I forget and I get it caught up, and that's been the source of a lot of I'm trying to the word I want to use is is a potty mouth word. That's been the source of a lot of the damage to the ear. I've already gone through like 3 pairs of earbuds due to this fact. I'm a whole mess, you guys, I'm telling you. Okay. Almost there. Come on, open up Chrome. There we go. All right. All right, so I'm going to mute for just a second and get all this stuff. Well, no, I think I should. It's still loading, so yeah. I'm going to take a sip of water. Maybe that'll calm me down. I feel like Annelle when she overslept because she stayed up all night cooking the I forgot red beans and rice because it was in the phrases beautifully section of her cookbook. And Trivy shows up to pick her up and she's like, and I just know I'm going to miss church. And then Trivy says, Annette, cool down. I'm gonna have to get the hose. It's the one chick movie I like a lot. And recently, it's taken me, I don't know, however long The Notebook's been out, right? Everybody's like, you got to watch The Notebook, Jen. You got to watch The Notebook, Jen. And I tried a million different times, all right? And I was just like, I don't care, right? But then this last time I tried and I was like, okay, I don't care what happens. I am not going to stop watching. And I watched it, and it's actually a really good movie. I was surprised. Okay, so here's what happened, coolest reviews with the water situation. Okay, remember how I was like, okay, I'm giving up the tea and the Pepsis or whatever for Lent, right? Okay. Well, obviously Lent is over. And so then I would stop paying attention and I would have tea. And then I would go to refill my cup and not refill it with water. So now I'm back on I can't even entertain tea because I clearly lack self-control. So I appreciate those who have stuck with me through this trying ish period. All right. All right. I'm going to mute. Give me just a sec. And we're back. All right, let me get us to the trial. So far, we've missed about 10 minutes if they started like right exactly on time. So we're okay. All right. I fix this. And go.
Factors that you considered in determining that Ms. Hurd suffers from personality disorders. And one of them, I think the last one you said before you left was self-report. What do you mean by that?
So the self-report would be things that Ms. Hurd indicated to me specifically. So there were a couple of characteristics that she noted in her self-report that were consistent with these personality disorders. The first was actually my own behavioral observations of her based on her self-report. So one of the hallmark characteristics of histrionic personality disorder is sort of a overly dramatic presentation. We call this impressionistic speech. So it tends to be very flowery. It uses a lot of descriptive words like magical, wonderful, and it can go on for quite some time, and yet it really lacks any substance. So at the end, you're left wondering what was just said or what the answer is to the actual question. So that occurred a number of times. And it also represented the quick shifts you'll see.
Bye, I've
between
learned a
emotions.
lot.
So
Thanks for
she would
coming.
suddenly be one way, and then she would become very animated or very sad. And when people are displaying these emotions with this personality disorder, there's a sense of shallowness to it. people who are observing them will feel like it's almost play acting, and they might not be able to put their finger on it. But part of it is because of the rapidness with which the person can switch emotions, and also the lack of substance. They don't really refer to, I feel this way. They might describe emotions, they might describe events, but very rarely, and Ms. Hurd did not say, I feel vulnerable. She never really indicated a vulnerable feeling of her own. Then the substance of her self-report. So when I was asking her information about her history.
Yeah, we're going to ask more about that later. I was just trying to get a sense of what a self-report was.
Oh, okay.
What psychological tests did you perform?
Okay, so psychological tests, I'll just go in order. So first of all, I asked her a couple questions from something called the mini mental status exam. That's really just a fancy way of saying that I wanted to make sure that she was alert and oriented to, we call it person, place, and time. That means she knew who she was, she knew who I was, she knew where we were, and she knew the date. That way I can ensure that she's able to participate in the evaluation and understand what's happening. I then administered something called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory 2. The 2 means that it's the second edition. And this is something we call an objective measure. So it asks 567 questions, more statements, and the person either agrees or disagrees with them, how much the statement represents them. And this test has been around since 1943. There are more than 10,000 studies showing that it is appropriate for determining somebody's personality traits. It measures all of those things I sort of mentioned, how a person thinks, feels, and behaves in multiple different aspects of their lives. It also measures very accurately any signs of mental illness or dysfunction. And the reason I also really like this test, whenever you're using a test for an evaluation that's going to be used in a forensic setting, people have a lot of incentive to present themselves in a way that's going to benefit their case. And they may want to look like they're sicker than they really are. They may want to look much healthier than they really are. And some of those incentives, they may not even realize that they're intending to do that. So it can be conscious or unconscious, but you really need to have a test that can check for that. And the MMPI-2 has a set of validity scales, we call them. These are scales that measure really the truthfulness and accuracy with which a person is approaching the test. And these scales on this particular test have been so well researched over many decades that they've become very nuanced, and they can tell us a lot about if somebody's, for instance, exaggerating. Are they elevating one of the scales that shows that they're exaggerating on purpose? Are they exaggerating in a manner that's more like a cry for help? Are they exaggerating in a manner that's clever and sophisticated or more obvious? And then the same exact thing goes for trying to minimize symptoms. We have a number of scales that can show us all the different, if somebody's trying to say they're the most wonderful person on earth, or if they're just trying to deny problems, and if they're doing that again in a very clever way or more of an obvious way. So that test was my choice for this case. There's one other reason I'd like to add, is that part of my evaluation was, one of the reasons was to assess whether Ms. Hurd has post-traumatic stress disorder, which I told you about earlier, as a result of the incidents that she's alleged occurred by Mr. Depp. And that's a really tough disorder to find out if somebody's faking it or not. It's one of the most easily faked disorders. Most of us know what it feels like to feel anxious. And a lot of people have seen war movies and movies that depict somebody having PTSD. In fact, some research has shown that if you give someone a diagnostic checklist and said, show that you have PTSD, they can do it 96% of the time, just someone on the street. So you really need a test that's very sensitive to that. And the MMPI-2 has been shown in multiple studies to be excellent at detecting those attempts.
Okay, you keep using MMPI-2. That's the abbreviation that you folks use for?
I'm sorry if I hadn't said that. That's the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory.
What other psychological testing did you perform?
So I also performed the clinician administered PTSD scale -5, and that -5 links it to the diagnosis for PTSD in our current diagnostic manual, the 5th version. To do that test, you first administer something called the Life Events Checklist. And the Life Events Checklist, both of these tests, by the way, were developed by the National Center for PTSD with the Department of Veterans Affairs. But the Life Events Checklist lists 16 different very stressful life events that people can go through that are often can be associated with developing PTSD. And then it also has a 17th item that you can fill in if you feel like you've been through something really difficult that wasn't included. Now, I like to also add something called the Life Events Checklist 5 interview, which digs a little bit deeper into the person's childhood as well to find out if there's so many different things that can be difficult growing up. And also, it's very important that you have the person determine which of the events they've listed, let's say they have a number of different types of traumas, which one do they feel like was the most traumatic for them? Which one still causes them to feel distressed when they talk about it? And sometimes they can't just identify one. And then that leads to your next decision. So if they have multiple different similar types of events, like seeing combat, then you might use that as the worst one, the multiple similar. So that looks like you describe an anchor, we call it, to do the testing. And we would maybe describe the anchor as the worst of my combat experience, okay? Now, if somebody had multiple different traumas from different times in their life, like childhood abuse, and then went to combat and had some horrible things happen there, you would do the clinician-administered PTSD scale test, the one that comes after. You do one for the childhood event and a separate one for the adulthood event.
Does this, the abbreviation?
It does.
Okay.
We'll call it the CAPS 5. That's actually what it goes by.
Okay. How common is the use of the MMPI-2 in your profession?
The MMPI-2 is actually the most commonly used assessment worldwide by mental health professionals and in forensic settings for the court.
Why'd you use it?
I used it for that purpose and for its excellent validity in those settings across genders, across ethnicities, for different reasons. And when I keep saying validity, by the way, what I mean is accuracy, and I'll try to work that in, but then also for detecting the accuracy with which a person reports PTSD.
Okay. Is that scaled in some way?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Does that make use of a scale in some way?
The MMPI-2, do you mean specifically for PTSD?
Yes.
There's actually a combination of scales you want to look for. You would never make the diagnosis just based on one scale alone, or even on the test alone. You'd integrate other data.
Yeah. How did you administer the MMPI-2 to Ms. Hurd?
I provided her the test on an iPad. She essentially had her own little desk area and then an iPad. She hits start, it provides her with the instructions, and then it gives her 567 statements in order. For each one, she taps true or false.
What did you learn about Ms. Hurd from the results of the MMPI-2?
Quite a bit. I wrote up a 25-page interpretation outline. It has numerous scales. So one of the reasons I like this measure so much is that it can tell you so much about multiple different traits and tendencies and mental issues. One of the primary things I learned was that she had a very sophisticated way of minimizing any personal problems. I also learned that she tends to, there were a number of characteristics that were consistent with the eventual diagnoses, but some of the primary characteristics, and I'm going to try to condense 25 pages here, were essentially externalization of blame, tending to have a lot of inner hostility that is attempted to be controlled, a tendency to be very self-righteous, but to also deny that self-righteousness and to judge others critically against these sort of high standards for moral value, but also to deny doing that, essentially to claim that one is very non-judgmental and accepting, and yet very full of rage, really. And these aren't facts, but her scores essentially correlated. So they were consistent with other people who obtained these scores who have been shown through many, many, many studies to have these very specific traits. So externalization of blame, a lot of inner anger and hostility, sometimes that anger among these groups with similar scores, these people might have that anger kind of explode out at times. They tend to be very passive aggressive. They may be self-indulgent, very self-centered. They could use manipulation tactics to try to get their needs met, very needy of attention, acceptance, approval. They tend to distance people who are close to them. Initially, they may seem very charming. They're very socially sophisticated, actually. That was a major component on there. They have a capacity to kind of offer some of their faults, but in a way, but only the ones that people think of lightly and can all relate to. And so they can present as very fair and balanced, but in actuality, they really might be very judgmental of others and unaware of problems in their behavior and their thinking.
So after you provide the examination via the iPad, what do you do?
So once they've completed the test, you can have it scored by the computer immediately. It's a very, very complex test to interpret, but right away you get a list of what's called critical items. And these are just some, a couple of the items, the statements that are presented that are more clearly symptom-based. And I always follow up with the examinee. Some of these might have to do with suicide. Some of them might have to do with other symptoms that you just like to get a little bit more information on, because sometimes an examinee might tell you they're completely fine when you're doing your interview with them and that they have no symptoms. And then when they take the test, it says that they're having trouble sleeping, or they struggle with nausea all the time, or they feel very anxious. And so you want to follow up on that.
Okay. What's a code type?
A code type, let me think of how to explain this very, very simply. So the main scales, and I keep referring to scales, these are just the main scores that come up on this test. We can refer to them as codes. And when I was saying that Ms. Hurd's scores could be compared to certain groups of people that had been researched before to obtain similar scores, the research has shown that certain people will have certain scores that kind of spike on this, okay? And so all of those traits that I was describing, those are traits that are found in these code types. So it means that score number 2 was high, and score number 6 was high. And so if we have those two scores were both high.
I believe
then
it was
that's a
the
2-6
January
code type.
2022,
types-
Christine.
What code type is this?
And
Ms. Hurd
yes, they
had the
definitely would
clearest
have
code
had the
type was
results.
3-6, but then she also had some other code types that were less significant.
Also,
What
yes to this.
Characteristics are associated
Agreed.
with the 3-6 code type.
Well, you're agreeing
So a
with me.
3-6
So
code type,
we both agree.
a lot of
Yay.
that anger is expressed in this code type. There can be actually a lot of cruelty, usually
Oh.
with people who are less powerful. Actually, when you see this code type, you want to, if you can, to follow up with subordinates, coworkers, people who may have observed their behavior more closely. The 3-6 code type is very concerned with their image, very attention-seeking, very prone to externalizing blame to a point where it's unclear whether they can even admit to themselves that they do have responsibility in certain areas. A lot of suppressed and denied anger, but the anger is very present, will explode out, and a lot of issues in their close relationships.
how does
This
it
is literally
Mr.
the
Code
worst
type,
Google review I've
fit into
ever
your overall
heard.
opinion as to personality disorders?
Well, this might be an appropriate time to describe a little bit about these personality disorders, because I think what you'll hear is that there's a lot of consistency there. So borderline personality disorder is a disorder of stability. It's instability, and it's instability in personal relationships. It's instability in their emotions. It's instability in their behavior, and it's instability in their sense of self and their identity. And that instability is really driven by this underlying terror of abandonment. So one of the key features also of this disorder, and all of it is like pistons of an engine kind of firing off and igniting one another. But when somebody is afraid of being abandoned by their partner or by anybody else in their environment, and they have this disorder, they'll make desperate
This is a
attempts
scathing
to prevent that from happening.
review.
And those desperate attempts could
Yikes.
be physical aggression, it could be threatening, it could be harming themselves. But these are behaviors that are usually very extreme and very concerning to the people around them. The anger is typically what, sadly, it's counteractive, right? So the thing these people fear most is being abandoned, but over time, the anger, the explosive anger that they show when somebody is needing space, or when somebody's really not doing anything wrong, because a lot of times they read into things that they perceive as being a slight to them or being somebody intending to harm them that actually isn't happening. They'll exaggerate it, and they'll explode. They'll react in this heightened manner that is just exhausting for their partners.
I wonder
Oftentimes
if
their
her
partners
family is
will,
listening to this somewhere.
uh,
Just, well,
try
I
to
don't
make
know,
them
maybe they
happy at
would be
first and
witnesses,
really allow
but
themselves to be a
dang,
punching bag,
thinking
thinking
like,
that they
yup.
can somehow
Mm-hmm.
solve this problem, that somehow they can make this better. And eventually it just overwhelms them. Histrionic personality disorder
I'd
is
like for
very
them
Before we
to,
move on to
Okay.
yeah,
that,
can we just move on? Oh, here
so
we go. Here, she won't even make eye
emotional
contact. Look at her
reactivity.
face.
I am.
What is that?
So emotional reactivity is
Oh, she smiled
very
and
common
wrote.
in the diagnosis.
This doctor
So
is about to get a
essentially,
bad Google review.
like I said, there's instability in emotions.
Yikes.
People with borderline personality disorder are often misdiagnosed as having bipolar disorder because they can be up and down. They can look very depressed, and they can look very elated, but these changes are happening within a matter of hours. Somebody with bipolar disorder, this is a clinical depression lasting days, weeks, a clinical mania where sometimes they even need to be hospitalized because they're so grandiose. They clear out their bank account and go to Vegas and spend it all. They're acting in some very bizarre ways. With borderline personality disorder, you're having these fluctuating moods constantly. And again, this hypersensitivity to being slighted or feeling offended, really driven by the fear that if you're offended or slighted, if the therapist comes in 2 minutes late, or if somebody shows up to dinner 2 minutes late, that they might be abandoning you. And it's not as if the borderline is considering themselves abandoned in that moment, but they just know that they have this overwhelming emotion, and there are no attempts to control that emotion. There are no attempts to regulate it. So if they're in the middle of the restaurant and they feel offended, they're going to start the fight. People are going to see it, or they might just start crying or break down, but they'll make a lot of accusations. And that reactivity is when you're going to see a lot of this escalation in the bizarre behavior. They can react violently. They can react aggressively. They will often physically prevent their partner from trying to leave if their partner wants to get space from all of this intense emotion. And oftentimes they will be abusive to their partners in these situations. Sometimes they'll physically restrain them from leaving and become injured that way. But also, people with borderline personality disorder, it seems to be a predictive factor for women who implement violence against their partner. And one of the most common tactics that they'll use is actually physically assaulting and then getting harmed themselves. But mostly, we call this administrative violence. So essentially, this is saying that they'll make threats using the legal system. So they might say that they are going to file a restraining order or claim abuse, or they might do these things to essentially try to keep their partner from leaving. in the moment, again, they're not consciously thinking, I'm going to keep my partner from leaving right now. They're just thinking, I can't stand this. I hate my partner. They went from idealizing to suddenly devaluing because of the hurt, and they'll do anything to express that big emotion of anger.
Your Honor, may we approach?
All right, yes, sir.
Okay. I'm not qualified to answer this question for any clinical diagnosis. This is just for entertainment purposes only. But it is my understanding that people who have personality disorders, therapy is very rarely successful. It's one of the most difficult things to treat because it's who you are as a person versus something like depression or like schizophrenia. And to ask about her childhood. So in the opening statements for Amber Heard, there was testimony that her dad was very stern, very strict, and really
Okay.
didn't allow Amber to be
You
or
indicated,
show emotions, to be
you're talking
emotional
about
or
emotional
show
reactivity.
emotions.
What
Sorry, I had a
kind of
little
emotional
hiccup.
reactivity did you observe in your review? Let's do this one at a time.
Okay. So there were a couple indications to me. First, I can sort of think about it with the treatment records. So particularly Dr. Cohen-Connell's, am I getting the name right? I feel like for some reason in my mind, I might have just reversed it. But Dr. Cohen's records, I did reverse it. He actually refers to this reactivity quite a bit and to Ms. Hurd's temper. And that temper, it's often branded, or being hot-headed, is really characteristic of borderline personality disorder, as is their very charming, personable nature. This is a disorder of contradictions. In Nurse Filati's notes, I thought there was something interesting. She references a night when they're out to dinner, I believe in London, and she provided positive reinforcement to Ms. Hurd because Ms. Hurd had been disappointed by a mistake made by the server, and it sort of references how previously she might have criticized the server and become upset by that, and that she didn't this time, and so that had been some sort of a step forward. And there was also an indication actually in Dr. Hughes's, Dr. Hughes is a forensic psychologist who had been appointed by Ms. Hurd to conduct as an evaluation as well. In Ms. Hughes's interview of Ms. Hurd disclosed that she had cut her arm in the past, which is a typical reactive type thing somebody with this diagnosis can do. It's one of the symptoms. And that's sort of all I can think of top of my mind from the treatment records. Moving into some of the declarations or deposition testimony, what struck me was Ms. Raquel Pennington's testimony. She's a former friend of Ms. Hurd's, and she told a story about, I suppose they were shopping for Thanksgiving accoutrements, something to prepare for Thanksgiving, and Ms. Hurd struck her in the face, sort of out of the blue, which is, I thought was interesting because that is one of those signs of borderline personality disorder.
We're seeing it right now.
If a friend or a loved one isn't meeting your needs in that moment, people with borderline personality disorder can be very caring in their relationships as long as their needs are being met. They feel that their needs should be met when they want them met at a specific level. And if they're not, then that anger, that sense of harm causes them to react. So the striking Ms. Pennington, per Ms. Pennington's report in the declaration or the testimony, I thought was pretty consistent. And then Ms. Hurd's own self-descriptions.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question about,
Sure.
you indicated Miss Pennington was a former friend
Yes.
of Miss Hurd. Is there a relationship between borderline personality disorder and intimate relationships?
Yes, so the instability definitely translates to their relationships. You'll see relationships start very intensely. People will, somebody with borderline personality disorder perceives the relationship as extremely close. This pattern of idealizing and devaluing is definitely at play. They do this with their lovers and also with their friends. And so this might be the perfect person, their perfect soulmate friend, perfect soulmate partner, and their engagement in the relationship is very alluring, very charming to the other person. And so initially everything seems great. But what occurs is that reality sets in. People are not perfect, even when we have a lot in common with them. Whereas most of us can accept somebody as a whole, somebody who has a little bit of flaws, and still think this is my great friend who always constantly running late for dinner. The person with borderline personality disorder, things are in these extremes, this black and white, we call it splitting. And so that person goes from being idealized, the perfect person, to dumpster. They are totally devalued. They are the worst friend. They don't care anything about me. I have better people around. And then there will be a repair, because the person with this disorder does feel remorseful after they have these reactions, angry, tell their friend off. But over time, it wears away at these relationships. And so what you'll usually see is many, many transitions in their friendships over the years, people who have sort of fallen by the wayside, who were really very close knit at one time, and then, but there's not a lot of consistency in the long term. You'll also see that with their intimate relationships, many, many relationships, but none that are particularly long term.
How does borderline personality disorder relate to identity issues?
So again, that instability also travels toward identity. And when I was describing personality earlier, I was talking a little bit about those traits we have that help us know who we are. When you have borderline personality disorder, that actually is not something you understand. So people with this disorder actually take on the identity of the people they're spending time with because it's comforting. It's very uncomfortable to not know who you are. Some people with this disorder will describe a feeling of emptiness when they feel like they've been abandoned because now they don't know who they are in the world. And so when somebody with this disorder is going through that initial enmeshment phase with new people and they're idealizing them, they often will take on the identities of those people. So they may mimic them in a lot of ways. They might mimic the way they dress, their interests, the way they talk. And for this reason, the people around somebody with this disorder kind of from the outside may feel like, wait, I thought you were this way. Now you're advocating for this, and this is your new main interest in life, or the thing you're throwing yourself into all completely. Music tastes might change, hobbies will change, the way they dress.
Okay. In addition to borderline personality disorder, I understand that you diagnosed another personality disorder. What's that?
So histrionic personality disorder, and these are really two sides of the same coin. They belong to the same cluster. We call these clusters.
I'm
It's a way
hopeful that we
organize
can
personality
get Dr.
disorders and
B in
DSM.
here at
And
some
this
point, if
cluster
not
is
tonight,
described
to
as
discuss
the
this
personality disorders that
testimony
are dramatic,
specifically
erratic, and emotional.
and answer
Okay,
these
so
kinds of
unpredictable,
questions.
but really having to do with emotions and relationships. They're very similar. Whereas I was saying that borderline personality disorder, a lot of the key features that you're going to notice are instability. When it comes to histrionic, a lot of the key features are going to be drama and shallowness. Similarly, with borderline personality disorder, there's this underlying drive of avoiding abandonment. With histrionic personality disorder, that underlying drive is to always be the center of attention. Because if you don't have that attention on you, it feels similarly to borderline personality disorder. You feel pretty empty, like you don't have that sense of being or of value. Okay. So whereas borderline personality disorder might have more of the visible reactivity if somebody seems to be leaving, with histrionic personality disorder, what you're going to see is extreme discomfort with not being the center of attention, extreme efforts to be the center of attention. And when they feel that they're not the center of attention, you will see some strange things, making up stories to try to get attention, often taking on a victim or princess role. Those two roles in particular are pretty consistent. Seeking caretaking. Borderline personality disorder is similar because with borderline personality disorder, these shifts of identity and the splitting, you might see somebody go from being, in the DSM, it describes it as a needy supplicant of help, seeking the perfect caretaker, to suddenly being the avenger against injustice or thinking that their partner is a terrible person. With histrionic, what you'll see is somebody who wants to be the center of attention, has sort of that impressionistic speech, very flowery, very enthusiastic, but nothing's really being said.
Off all the
moment
crackers.
your attention wears away because they're so demanding.
I don't know,
for
cement
attention,
shoes.
That's when they might take the victim role or the
I
princess
have to
role
talk to
and even
Dr.
make
B
up
and you
stories.
guys and figure it
Sometimes
out.
those stories are to bolster the victim role. Sometimes those stories are just to make them look more interesting or accomplished in their mind so that they can get respect and attention that way.
Is there a relation between histrionic personality disorder and attractiveness?
There is, strangely, and this is always one of the trickiest things to talk about because how is that a symptom? But characteristically, people with this disorder are very, very interested in looks, but more importantly, they utilize their looks to get that attention, to get that respect that they're seeking. And so this type of a personality might be flirtatious with everybody. Characteristically, they actually couldn't even be subtly, and when I say flirtatious, I'm not talking overtly sexy, but kind of inappropriately flattering. Sometimes they act in a kind of a girlish way to be cute and to engender attention. And this will even occur in their therapy relationships as a way to sort of avoid getting negative feedback or criticism. Oftentimes they'll bring the therapist gifts or be distracting if they engage in therapy because they just don't want any criticism. They want the therapist to like them.
Does the intelligence of the affected person bear on the manner in which these disorders present?
Excuse me, I choked a little at my water. Yes, and I think one way to think about it that's probably a little more accurate than just intelligence is, in psychology, we would describe this more as sophistication. So street smart, so to speak. The way, for instance, I've had many clients who have borderline personality disorder who are messy and really clearly suffering, and they might be difficult and all over the place and yell at you in the middle of a session, but it's so it's not tailored. It's so much easier to work with because of that just openness and rawness of it, genuineness. Sometimes you'll have a more sophisticated presentation. There are 9 symptoms and only 5 have to be met. So there are a lot of different combinations and different ways it can present. And sometimes you'll have more of a petulant version of this where it really shows when you push the button and you're kind of, whoa, what was that? So somebody who's really productive, high functioning, successful, and you get to know them and you think they're fantastic because they're so interested in you too. And you might not realize it, but they're mimicking you perfectly. So you're really just kind of falling in love with this new friend who is being you. But then all of a sudden, you say
All right,
something
that's
that
what
they
we'll
think
do,
is
Cement
offensive,
Shoes. She'll be
and
next.
you can't, even in your wildest thoughts, understand how that could have offended somebody, but their reaction is so strong that you kind of buy into it. Gosh, maybe I did say something offensive, and you feel bad about it. So that sophisticated version, they can be a little bit more calculated in the way they present. They tend to kind of hit you where it hurts a little bit more, and they can be actually very, very destructive.
What conclusions were you able to draw about Ms. Hurd's sophistication from her testing?
Well, from her testing and from her presentation, she was very likable, but her testing in particular showed that she approached it in a manner that, remember I told you about those
Hey,
skills that are
Lori's Life
creating-
Stories. You came in at the
she
perfect
approached it
time.
in a manner that very clearly
This
minimized
forensic
any
psychologist is
psychological
giving
dysfunction. Not just
her
that,
Google
but
review
really
of Miss
presented herself
Hurd.
as free of any problems.
It
And
ain't
she
good.
did so in a way that was very, very sophisticated, not obvious, by responding to questions that most people might not notice were trying to detect that.
How did you determine that?
So that's based on a particular scale on the MMPI-2 that is designed specifically to detect a type of responding that's a little bit more clever, a little bit more sophisticated, minimizing problems in a way that most lay people probably wouldn't understand, and even providers, very difficult to detect.
You mentioned that one of the characteristics of borderline personality disorder is emotional reactivity. How might that present in an intimate relationship?
So I think it probably presents mostly, or you'd see the bulk of it in intimate relationships because of that regular interaction and the desire for your partner to meet all of your needs, to be the perfect caretaker. Also that the hallmark of the disorder with the splitting, so idealizing, devaluing, and the perceiving of all sorts of neutral events as somehow demeaning or disrespectful. It's regular escalations of anger, frustrated complaints, criticisms of your partner. But because the person with borderline personality disorder, first of all, they're more sensitive to things. They feel distress more strongly, and then that distress lasts longer. So these types of blow-ups go on forever, and they're very cyclic. It feels like you just can't get a resolution, and eventually the partner will try to leave, will want to leave to take a break. It wears them down, and that's when the borderline might explode and act very aggressively or violently to try to prevent them from leaving.
In addition to diagnosing Ms. Hurd with these two personality disorders, did you form another opinion about Ms. Hurd's mental status?
Yes, so there, go ahead.
If the answer to that is yes, I'm going to now ask you,
Okay,
what was
yes,
that?
I did.
Okay, what is it?
So in addition to looking for Ms. Hurd's general mental status, any psychological issues that were present, I very specifically was assessing to determine whether post-traumatic stress disorder was present, and it was not.
How do you know that?
So first of all, from multiple information sources, right? So I was integrating the interview, my review of the data, the case records, other people's testimony, her treatment records. And then I also conducted, in addition to the MMPI-2 and looking at that data, I also conducted the clinician-administered PTSD scale, the CAPS-5, which is the gold standard PTSD assessment developed by the National Center for PTSD, shown to be valid, accurate for use not just with service members, but also with civilians, men, women, all genders, and also all
Dear.
ethnicities, and then also specifically for use in a courtroom setting.
How do you conduct the CAPS-5?
So the CAPS-5 is a standard interview. What that means is that it's an interview with very clear questions that are scripted, and you ask those same questions every time you test a person. So because you're doing that, you're actually taking something that would typically be kind of subjective, an interview with somebody, and you're making it more objective. When you ask those same questions in the same way, every time somebody's assessed with this, now you can apply a scoring protocol and actually score their responses.
As a result of applying those protocols, what did you conclude?
Ms. Hurd did not have PTSD, and there were also pretty significant indications that she was grossly exaggerating symptoms of PTSD when asked about them.
How did you make that latter conclusion?
So one of the strengths of this test, as I mentioned, the important thing about any test used when you're doing an evaluation in forensics is to make sure that the person is responding accurately. And this test does that by not just asking people whether they have a symptom, but asking follow-up questions that draw out very detailed accounts of every single symptom of PTSD. And when you're really familiar with this disorder, which you need to be to administer this test, there are nuances in the way a person will describe their symptoms that have been shown repeatedly to indicate exaggeration or faking. There are also indications when somebody is clearly giving you a genuine response.
Okay. What, if any, symptoms of PTSD did you observe in Ms. Hurd?
So there are 20 kind of core symptoms that somebody can manifest with PTSD. You don't have to have all of them. Ms. Hurd initially said that she had, in the first question, you say, do you ever have this? Before you get to the more nuanced follow-up questions. When I asked that first question on each item, she initially said, yes, I have that, to 19 of the 20 symptoms. That's not typical even of somebody with the most disabling form of PTSD.
Oh dear.
When we eventually sort of dialed it down, she had 3 remaining symptoms. And having symptoms of any disorder is common for all of us. Some of us struggle with sleep. Some of us get anxious. It could be several different disorders. It could just be that you have this struggle in your life. But she had 3 specific symptoms that I scored as present. Off the top of my head, I might miss one, but one was sleep disturbance. So she reported that she has frequent nightmares. Another one was that she said that she tends to have a startle response. So if she gets startled or surprised, she tends to stay in sort of a hyper startle mode for quite a while. And that's consistent with a couple of things. It can be consistent with PTSD if other criteria are met. It's also consistent with childhood complex trauma, which is something that can occur when your brain is forming. If you constantly feel unsafe, if your parents are abusive, or if they're not present.
Thank you, Allie,
neglected,
79.
you
I don't
can
know what else to
develop
say.
certain physiological responses that can stay for a long time in your life. So I noted that seemed like a very genuine, accurate account where she stays in the state of kind of hyper arousal, has a hard time calming down if she gets surprised.
You mentioned nightmares as well.
Yes.
Did she recount for you the nature of the nightmares?
So they were vague. She indicated that she has recurrent nightmares and that she feels as though she's being held down. And there was some conflict in that account because even though that could be a PTSD symptom, it is fairly vague, but I still scored it as present. And in her initial treatment with Dr. Bonnie Jacobs, which I believe started before she began dating Mr. Depp, she had indicated to Dr. Jacobs, according to Dr. Jacobs's notes, that she was having repetitive nightmares back then and that they were related to her childhood trauma. And so that came up several times in the notes. Dr. Jacobs kept mentioning that.
Thank you. What is feigning?
Feigning is essentially faking or exaggerating symptoms that aren't present.
Does the CAPS-5 control for that?
It doesn't necessarily control for it. It can expose it by drawing out
How does that work?
because you're not just simply handing the person a checklist that says, here are all the symptoms of PTSD. Why don't just check off the ones you have, which clearly if you're trying to look like you have PTSD, you would just check them all. The CAPS-5, because it requires them to describe in detail how they experience the symptom, where it shows up, what it looks like, what sort of examples they can give you, how many times it's happened in the last couple of weeks, how many times it's happened in the last month. By the end of each symptom, you've gotten a very good picture of a couple things. One, does it meet the definition of the symptom? Are they getting it right? Is this actually the symptom, or are they kind of confusing this with something else? Number two, are they giving you very vague accounts? Are they giving you kind of a stereotyped idea of what the symptom is based on media or movies or something that actually is completely different from genuine experiences of this symptom? Or are they
Well, I
giving
think
you
there'll be a Lifetime movie,
very
but I don't think
genuine,
she'll be
heartfelt,
starring in it.
sometimes
That's for sure.
minimizing, but it's ticking all the boxes. Their mannerisms while they're describing it, the actual very specific, very nuanced, symbolic ways they're describing it. A lot of times it smells, it sounds, that all appears in genuine accounts, and it's something that people really get wrong when they're feigning.
In addition to your conclusion that Ms. Hurd does not have PTSD, did you make a conclusion with respect to her symptoms?
Yes, actually I did. So, just because somebody doesn't have PTSD doesn't mean that they weren't harmed psychologically by whatever is being alleged. In this case, Ms. Hurd is alleging that she was psychologically harmed and that she suffered PTSD because of abuse that she alleges occurred by Mr. Depp.
Her
So I
team needs to
also-
advise
the
her to
MMPI
reach a
too is helpful
settlement
because it shows you kinda
immediately and
everything,
stop
any other
this.
symptoms. And then in Ms. Hurd's own self-report and her prior treatment records, I knew that she had reported to me that she had had some other symptoms. So now what becomes really important is
Oh, hey,
determining-
Momo. Good to see you,
and let me
babe.
clarify one thing here. Not so much a diagnosis, but did she start to experience symptoms during the relationship and after? Did they worsen after? Or could these types of symptoms or reports be explained by other factors? A, by feigning, B, by pre-existing conditions, or C, by other stressful life events that might have occurred. So the main symptoms that I was looking at didn't meet criteria for PTSD, right? There was also, substantial evidence of this sort of emotional dysregulation, emotional disorganization, the shallowness, the dramatic affect. Now, when you have a lot of childhood trauma, you can actually have some similar type presentation in adulthood. There are some differences though, but also that's not something that would have occurred after this relationship. So now I was looking at, are there indications that these types of things that she's described, this transient anxiety, the issues with sleep, were these there prior? And sure enough, Ms. Hurd, in her own self-report, stated to me that when she first got to LA, she was seeking treatment for, in her words, blanket anxiety and depression. She also reported that she was taking medications. In general, none of them were helpful. That's actually very typical of borderline personality disorder. Medications typically aren't very helpful for somebody with the disorder. They really need an intensive, lifelong type of therapy, which is not necessarily as relevant.
I was
to this.
being facetious.
But
F you. They're not
interestingly
going to
also,
advise her to do that. And even,
people with
let's say they
borderline
did
personality
advise her
disorder
to do
often
that.
respond
You
really
think he's really going to
positively
take it? No.
to stimulant medications that are given for ADD or ADHD.
But I have
And
a strong
one of Nurse
suspicion
Pilates notes,
she's going to take the
reported that
stand
Ms. Hurd
regardless.
told her that none of the medications were working for her except for one Provigil, which is often prescribed as stimulant medication. And I just thought that was interesting and sort of consistent with more of these lifelong personality disorders that aren't necessarily caused by a harm by any allegations, but have been there and will remain there typically. The other issue, so the anxiety, she had already indicated that had been there prior, but the form of the anxiety. So looking at Dr. Hughes's testing and then also looking at the scores on the MMPI, when you look at all these little combinations of the scores, you can actually learn a lot about, is the anxiety related to an event, or is this more a person who tends to be an anxious person regardless of what's going on in their life? And somebody might describe them as a worrywart. And the scores, the little combination of scores that she obtained actually indicated that it was the latter, that her anxiety tends to be separate from events and more just kind of a constant, and it comes and goes, but it's more of a trait.
I have no further questions.
Hey, Nadine, good to
Alright.
see you. Thanks for stopping
Maybe
by.
why don't we go ahead and
Enjoy
go
your
ahead and have
lunch
our
break.
It might be a good idea to break it up there. Okay, I know. I can see you jumping up. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take our lunch recess. Just again, do not do any outside research and don't discuss the case with anybody, okay? We'll have you back here.
All right. We finna stop sharing. Okay. Give me just a second to close this tab. Okay. Holy. Y'all, I can't even. I'm not even going to try to be professional in this moment. Holy shit snacks. That is all. Okay. Let's break this down a minute. First and foremost, I want to just give this disclaimer. Okay. I am not qualified, nor am I attempting to treat, diagnose any of those things. This commentary is for entertainment purposes only. Hope y'all's entertained. Okay. Now, that being said, also, I'm really not all that knowledgeable, and I don't have a lot of experience watching civil court cases. I mainly have been in the true crime realm, and those I understand very, very well. Civil cases, not as much. I mean, some of the rules are still the same. Okay. Now, what I can't quite figure out, hey, Nicole, is I can figure out who thought that this was necessary. Obviously, Johnny Depp's team would think that this type of evaluation would be very necessary. Okay, that I get. But what I cannot wrap my brain around at all is anyone from Amber Heard's team thinking that this evaluation in any way, shape, or form would be a good idea. Even if they 111 billion% believe her story, right? Which, to be fair, they don't have to believe her story. They just have to represent her. All right. But let's just say for shits and giggles, right? Or our devil's advocate, that Amber's story is 100% accurate. The things happen exactly the way that she said they did. Okay. This woman who is on the stand right now is basically qualified to analyze the worst of the worst, okay, which we typically think of as the serial killers, okay? Now, granted, that's on the high end of the type of people that, right, the most extreme end. But if she is qualified to diagnose people of that caliber, right? Certainly she is qualified to suss out whether or not Amber Heard suffers from PTSD, and if she has any personality disorders and what they may be, if she has mental health issues and what they may be. Like, she's super duper qualified. Okay. This is like going in and talking to, I'll give John Douglas. Okay, an FBI profiler. I wouldn't want to talk to him either. I don't want to be profiled on any level. I don't even really want to know myself that well, to be honest with you. I know my flaws. I work on them every single day, but I don't think I'm mentally prepared to hear more flaws and more work for me to do. Thanks, but no thanks. Okay. My plate is full. Then on top of it, what she came out with, which I find very fascinating. And the reason I find it fascinating is because I think all of us, even, have suspected something ain't right. Now we know exactly what it is that ain't right. But what I actually find fascinating about the diagnosis is how she arrived at the diagnosis. And the fact that she incorporated all of Amber's records, essentially, from any type of any doctor's therapy, et cetera, that she had had. I found that to be fascinating because, like, if you watched that whole, like I said, yes, cement shoes, it does. This was, I mean, like, I just don't, I'm freaking floored. I'm stumbling around more than usual, because I can't wrap my brain around who thought this was a good idea to do on her team. So it's just fascinating to me that, Amber Heard's self-reporting, and I'm talking about self-reporting not to the well, both really, to the media, right, in this trial, right, and then on top of it to her different therapists, including this one, who, you know what I mean. So the fact that there is a disconnect between what Amber says she has or is going on with her and what she actually has and what's going on with her is there's a great distance. And I think that the thing about her having histrionic disorder is one of the traits I, interestingly enough, actually makes for a good actor or actress. You need to be able to be, for lack of a better word, extra, right? But the rest of it, like the borderline personality disorder, the fact that I think the biggest bombshell, because no, I don't think anybody was surprised that she has personality disorders. What they were was to be determined, right? That's not all that surprising. The biggest, I feel, bombshell that was dropped in this testimony was the fact that she does not have PTSD. And I find that is going to be a huge blow to her case, because a lot of what her defense lawyers have been asserting through the various questions, that their opening statements, the questions that they've asked Johnny Depp, the questions that they've asked other people who've testified thus far, has really been based around this situation that began in childhood, right? With the relationship that she has with her father specifically, and then has, because of other things that have occurred in her life even before meeting Johnny Depp, basically left her in a state that made it where she was ill-equipped to handle Johnny Depp with his, and these are their assertions, this is not me saying it, but it made her ill-equipped to deal with Johnny Depp's personality and then his substance and alcohol abuse. And that's really the crux of their explanation for these horrendous audio tapes that have come out, right? And this basically I just don't know. I'm, I don't know how they're going to recover. Okay. From this testimony, her case is going to recover from this testimony. But let me tell you something. I will be here to watch them try. Sure will. What do you mean? What was the cause of her PTSD, or why did she say she had PTSD? I want to make sure I answer the right question, because y'all know me, I'd be going 87 miles and a way around the actual point. So I'd hate to be 87 miles around the actual point for the wrong question also. Oh my goodness. This testimony was extremely damaging. Well, think about it. Think about her, what she has been diagnosed with having, and the traits that those personality disorders embody, right? Mirroring other people. Now, what is something that Johnny Depp has really opened up about during this trial? His childhood. And I personally, it's just my opinion, that this PTSD came from, I think the start of it came from an attempt to mirror Johnny Depp in an effort to lure him in and eventually capture him, right? Because of the commonality. So that's something that is in common with both of them, that would be. And then later on, she then used it as an excuse for audio and video that she knew was going to come out as a result of this. She had to have thought in her mind, because she is calculated, and the psychologist testified to that. She had to have thought it out in her mind that there was at least a chance that when all of these accusations first started, that Johnny Depp may have some things to say in response, right? That she certainly had to entertain that as a possibility. And I think that she's also definitely aware of the audio that's out there, because she is she's the one who recorded it, right? She knows what's on there, and she knows that there are going to be people, we're people, it's us, who hear that audio, no matter how it's cherry picked, no matter what the clips contain, right? That are going to be like, it really sounds like she instigated and then escalated the arguments. Not that Johnny Depp is not responsible for his behavior, but we're just talking about what her role in it. Because the thing is about Johnny Depp, what I've heard him say repeatedly, either in testimony or texts or emails, is an acknowledgement of his role and accountability for his part in all of it, and a desire to make it better, to try to fix it. Okay. Thus far, in any of the things that has been shown up until this point, we've not heard that from Amber. I shouldn't speak for you guys. I've not heard that from Amber Hurd. Okay. And she knew that these audio tapes were going to come out. For sure, for sure. It was a distinct possibility with the UK situation, and but it's an absolute possibility, obviously, for this defamation lawsuit. And I believe that it is her way, by coolest reviews, I believe it is her way of an explanation for what people have been hearing from her in these audio and video recordings. That the reason it seems that she's not handling it properly is because of the PTSD. She is ill-equipped to handle situations like this. That's what I think. That's just my personal opinion about all of it. Because I think, Allie, the thing is this isn't something that the person is completely aware of on a conscious level. Like, some of the things are obviously purposeful and intentional, right? But then there's other parts of it that aren't. And I have to agree, though, but that's, I think, the other crux of the deal, Allie, is that she's got a couple personality disorders. So the way that she reasons out and thinks about it is completely different from the way you or I would. I would want somebody to love me just for who I am. I'm too lazy, quite frankly, to wear a mask all of the time. I feel like that would be completely exhausting. And I would rather, in all of my relationships, I would rather people meet me and then make a decision whether they want to be friends with me or whatever based on that, versus meeting my representative and then later on I start letting out little bits and pieces of me. I just feel like I just feel like that's a tremendous amount of work, number one. And I also not a way to form genuine, lasting relationships of any type. But again, as of today, what are we on? April what? 26th? Yeah, April 26th. I have yet to be diagnosed with a personality disorder of any type. So there you go. And it's not like I've never been, I mean, I've had therapy before. It's just, I've never been diagnosed like that. So I don't think there's medication, Allie, to take away from to help a personality disorder. Things like depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. Those are different and can be treated with a combination of therapy and medication. Like, I'll give you an example. Anxiety, for example, like a generalized anxiety disorder. That is a chemical, that part of the what's happening when you have that is a chemical imbalance. So how you can fix chemical imbalances, right? But you can't really fix, like, there's no pill for lying. Okay. If you're a pathological habitual liar, there's no form of medication that I know of anyway, that you can take on a consistent basis that will cure you from lying. Right. But there is medication that you can take for things like anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, things like that, that help to correct the chemical imbalance that exists in the brain, in the body, that then helps you makes therapy more successful, right? But with this, there is no medication. Now, therapy, yeah, there's therapy, but it's complex, because the way that I understand it is that people with her specific type of personality disorders are prone to behaviors and thought processes that make therapy incredibly difficult, because therapy relies on the honesty of the patient, or the person, I should say, in therapy, to be honest about what's going on in their life and to take full accountability and responsibility for the role that they play in the things that have occurred in their life. So it would be very difficult for her. It's not impossible, but therapy would be difficult and something she would definitely have to work at. But I will say this: one of the things that I saw when she was testifying, when they panned over, hey, Paula Walking, when they panned over to Amber Hurd, as the doctor was testifying and explaining how these personality disorders manifest themselves in in your life, right? And she was giving the example of being in a restaurant, and if something displeases a person like this with these personality disorders, rather than say, this is not the time nor the place, they deal with being their perception of being wronged or offended immediately, regardless of the time, the place, the circumstances. And as soon as while she was explaining that, the camera pans over to Amber, and you can see it in her face and in her body. There is a switch that she didn't like, which she was hearing out of the doctor. And to be fair, nobody would want to hear that about themselves. However, rather than remain stoic and remain where you cannot tell what's going on internally, she has an immediate reaction, and she begins scribbling ferociously and whatever on her little post-its. See, that to me is very, very telling. And basically all she did was personify exactly what the testimony of the doctor was in that moment. And I thought, damn, like that is how much self-awareness is lacking, because I don't know. I mean, I would imagine that on some level there's a lot of similarities in the advice given by attorneys to their clients in a criminal trial and a civil trial, meaning you cannot react. Don't have a visceral reaction. The jury is watching you, and obviously the cameras are filming you. So, like, keep it in check, sis, right? You know that they did. You know that they advised her of that. That's just pretty basic. And she didn't and hasn't. But I find it particularly interesting, and just one of those moments in the trial that you will remember and is significant and it stands out, is the fact that the doctor is testifying to the behavior, she then exhibits the behavior right there in front of God and everybody. So yeah, it's a lot. All right, you guys. So I think I'm gonna end the stream there at lunch. And I will definitely for sure 100% be back tonight at 9 Eastern. And we will finish up listening to the testimony, because at that point they're gonna, when they come back for lunch, it's going to be examination time. And you guys know I'm going to watch, and I cannot wait to talk about it with you guys. So I know, Paula, I'm sorry. And yes, Fran B. She is completely incapable. I mean, she can't control it. She's extremely reactive. And yeah, I was just like, bruh. Anyway, so I will see you guys at 9 Eastern. Thank you guys all for being here. Thank you for the chat. It was great. We have the best chats. I love our chat. And I'll see you guys tonight. And if you guys could do me a favor on your way out, give me a thumbs up if you liked what I did. And if you're so inclined, give me a thumbs down. Either way, it's cool. Just be honest. All right. I'll see you guys tonight. All right. Bye.